The scream tore through the ballroom before Cecilia could stop it. Her brother's signature, forged, reckless, damning, sat between her trembling fingers and the Duke of Ravensmoor's cold stare. 10,000 pounds. Her family's name, his trust, shattered. "Choose," he said quietly, and the word cut deeper than any blade. Behind her, her mother's whisper, "You know what you have to do, Cecilia. Protect him." In front of her, a little girl named Eliza watched with eyes that had seen too many broken promises. Blood or truth? Sacrifice or self? The choice that would define everything stood before her now. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far Cecilia's journey reaches across the world. The chandeliers in the Pemberton ballroom threw light like currency, generous to those who deserved it, sparse to those who didn't. Cecilia Harrow stood in a corner that had become familiar over the years, a territory she'd claimed through absence rather than presence. The pale blue dress her mother had insisted upon hung loose at the waist. They'd used last season's fabric, let out and restitched, because new gowns were for daughters who mattered. "Stand straighter," her mother hissed, passing by with a champagne flute that wouldn't be her last. "You're slouching again." Cecilia straightened. Habit, not obedience. The ballroom swirled with color and noise, debutantes in whites and creams, mothers in jewel tones that announced their daughter's worth, fathers negotiating futures over cigars in the corner. Cecilia had learned to read these rooms the way sailors read stars. Tonight's constellation pointed to one truth. Her younger sister Amelia was the prize everyone had come to see, and she was perfect for it. 17, blonde where Cecilia was dark, delicate where Cecilia was too tall, too sharp-featured, too much of everything that didn't photograph well in society's lens. Amelia laughed at something Lord Hartwell said, and the sound carried like bells. Practiced, pretty, everything their mother had cultivated. "Your sister looks radiant," someone said beside Cecilia. She turned. Lady Ashford, one of her mother's friends, smiled with teeth that had seen too much gossip and not enough kindness. "She does," Cecilia agreed, because what else was there to say? "And you—" Lady Ashford's eyes traveled down and up, an assessment that found Cecilia wanting. "Well, I'm sure there's someone suitable, perhaps a second son, or a widower with children who need a steady hand." The words landed like stones in still water, ripples of damage spreading outward. "Perhaps," Cecilia said. Lady Ashford patted her arm, pity disguised as comfort, and drifted away. Cecilia's fingers found the worn edge of her reticule, pressing against the small tear she'd been meaning to repair for weeks. She hadn't. There was always something more urgent. Thomas's debts, her mother's headaches, Amelia's wardrobe, the household accounts that never quite balanced because her father's investments never quite paid off. Cece. Her brother appeared at her elbow, too much cologne and borrowed confidence. Thomas at 23 looked like their father had at that age, handsome in a way that made people forgive things they shouldn't. His cravat was expensive, new. She didn't ask where the money had come from. "You look miserable," he said cheerfully. "I look appropriate. Same thing, in your case." He grinned, and despite everything, she almost smiled back. Thomas had that effect, made you complicit in your own overlooking. "Mother's been watching you. Try to look less like you're attending a funeral." "This is my pleasant face." Terrifying. He squeezed her shoulder. "I need to talk to you later, after the dancing." Something in his voice, too casual, too bright, made her stomach tighten. "What did you do?" "Nothing." The word came too fast. "Just later, all right?" Before she could press, their mother materialized like weather, her dress a deep burgundy that announced confidence they couldn't afford. Eleanor Harrow had been beautiful once. She still was, in the brittle way of women who'd fought for every inch of social ground and refused to surrender it. "Cecilia, stand with me near the refreshment table. You're lurking again." "I'm not." "You are." Her mother's hand locked around her elbow, steering her through the crowd with the efficiency of long practice. "And straighten your shoulders. You have your grandmother's height. Use it properly, or you just look awkward." They positioned themselves near the champagne, a strategic location that allowed Eleanor to monitor Amelia's progress while appearing casually social. Cecilia knew the routine. She was the set piece that made the display complete, the older, plainer sister who made Amelia shine brighter by comparison. "Lord Hartwell's eldest is dancing with her." Eleanor murmured, her eyes tracking Amelia across the floor. That's the third dance. He's interested. He's 19. He's an earl's heir. Her mother's voice sharpened. Don't be difficult, Cecilia. You know how this works. She did. She'd watched it work for years, standing in corners while her sister collected hearts like pressed flowers. The system wasn't cruel, it was efficient. Some girls were meant to be chosen. Others were meant to make the choosing easier by fading into wallpaper. I'm going to step outside, Cecilia said. The room is warm. 5 minutes. No longer. Eleanor was already scanning the crowd for the next strategic conversation, the next opportunity to position Amelia in someone important's line of sight. The terrace was a mercy. Cool air, darkness broken by scattered torches, the blessed absence of watchful eyes. Cecilia moved to the stone railing and let herself breathe without measuring it. She'd become good at this. Finding spaces between the expected moments, stealing air where she could find it. 25 years old, and she'd perfected the art of existing in the margins. Not quite invisible, but never quite seen either. I wondered if anyone else found these things suffocating. The voice came from her left, male, low, with an accent that marked northern estates and old money. Cecilia turned and found herself looking at a man who made the shadows seem deliberate rather than accidental. He was tall, probably mid-30s, with dark hair going silver at the temples and features that didn't apologize for their severity. His clothes were expensive in the way that stopped announcing itself, perfectly cut, perfectly plain, the kind of tailoring that costs more than flash because it didn't need to prove anything. Usually I'm the only one, she said, then wondered if honesty was the right choice with a stranger. Then we're both breaking pattern. He moved closer to the railing, not quite beside her, but near enough for conversation. I'm Ravensmore. The name hit like cold water. Everyone knew Ravensmore. The Duke of Ravensmore, technically, though he rarely used the title in introduction. War hero. Recluse. A man who'd attended Parliament twice in 10 years and still somehow controlled half the voting through proxies and careful pressure. Rumors followed him, about the scars hidden beneath his clothes, about the wife who'd died in childbirth, about the estate in the north where he raised his daughter in isolation. Cecilia Harrow, she managed. I know. At her surprised look, he added, Your mother has introduced me to your sister 3 times tonight. You were standing beside her twice. Heat crept up her neck. Of course her mother had targeted Ravensmore, a duke, widowed, wealthy, powerful. Never mind that he was old enough to be Amelia's father. Never mind that he looked at social functions the way other men looked at necessary surgeries. Amelia is lovely, Cecilia said, because the script was automatic. Amelia is 17 and terrified of saying the wrong thing. His voice held no judgment, just observation. You, on the other hand, are out here instead of in there collecting dances. I don't dance. Can't or won't. The question was direct in a way that bypassed small talk entirely. Cecilia found herself answering honestly. Won't, mostly. The mathematics of it never work out in my favor. Mathematics? Too tall for most partners, too old to be considered a prize, too useful at home to be spared for a husband who might expect me to prioritize his household over theirs. The words came out more bitter than she'd intended. Sorry, that was honest, Ravensmore said, unusual at these events. They stood in silence for a moment. Inside, the music swelled. Another waltz, another rotation of the same pretty patterns. How old are you? He asked. 25. And you've spent how many years managing your family's affairs? She looked at him sharply. What makes you think your brother owes money to 3 of my acquaintances? Your father's last investment scheme was discussed at my club as a cautionary tale. Your mother spends like a duchess on a baron's income. He said it without heat, just facts laid out like cards on a table. Someone keeps that family afloat. Your sister is too young, your brother too reckless, your parents too proud. That leaves you. Cecilia's hands tightened on the railing. Being seen was supposed to feel good. This felt like being flayed. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm about to make you an offer, and I want you to understand I'm not making it blindly. Her heart kicked against her ribs. Amelia is the one. I'm not interested in your sister. Ravensmore turned to face her fully, and she saw then what the rumors had missed. Not cruelty in his features, but a kind of exhausted clarity. A man who'd stopped pretending anything was simple. I'm interested in you. The world tilted slightly. You don't know me. I know you've sacrificed your youth keeping your family from collapse. I know you're intelligent enough to manage complex finances on a failing budget. I know you're standing out here instead of in there because you've learned not to expect anything for yourself. He paused. I know what that looks like because I've seen it in every mirror for the last 8 years. This is... Cecilia's breath felt shallow. Dukes don't propose on terraces to women they've just met. I'm not proposing, not yet. His gaze held hers. I'm asking if you'd consider an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? I have a daughter, Eliza. She's 9 years old, and she's had 4 governesses in 2 years because none of them lasted. She's angry and lonely, and I don't know how to reach her anymore. The admission came with difficulty, like words forced through a narrow space. I need someone who understands what it means to be overlooked. Someone who won't try to manage her like a problem to be solved. You want a governess. I want a partner. The correction was quiet but absolute. Someone who can be mother, teacher, friend, whatever she needs. Someone who won't leave when things get difficult. In exchange for what? Security, status, freedom from your family's debts. He said it plainly, no pretty wrapping. I'll settle your brother's obligations, provide for your parents, and give you a household of your own. What I'm offering isn't romance, Miss Harrow. It's respect and mutual benefit. Cecilia's mind was racing. This was insane. This was, why me? The question came out raw. You could have anyone. Someone younger, prettier, from a better family. I don't want pretty. I want capable. Ravensmore's voice was firm. I want someone who knows what it means to carry weight no one else sees. Someone who won't expect me to be something I'm not. And what are you? Tired, he said simply. Tired of performing. Tired of everyone wanting something from me that I can't give. Tired of watching my daughter become more like me every day, isolated, angry, convinced that caring for people only leads to loss. The honesty in it struck something deep. Cecilia knew that tiredness, lived it, wore it like a second skin. I don't know anything about children, she said. Neither do I anymore. A ghost of something that might have been humor crossed his face. We'd be learning together. This is... She stopped, started again. You're serious? Completely. The music inside reached a crescendo. Through the windows, Cecilia could see Amelia laughing, surrounded by admirers, her mother watching with satisfaction, Thomas talking too loudly in a corner, probably drinking too much. I need time, she said. To think. Of course. Ravensmore reached into his jacket, produced a card. My address in London. Send word when you've decided. She took the card. Their fingers didn't touch. One thing, he said, already turning to leave. Whatever you decide, decide for yourself, not for them. He was gone before she could ask what he meant. Dut. Cecilia didn't return to the ballroom immediately. She stood on the terrace holding a Duke's calling card and feeling like she'd stepped through a door into a room where all the furniture was slightly wrong. When she finally went inside, her mother descended immediately. Where have you been? Lord Ashford was asking about you. His nephew needs a companion for his mother. I thought you might... Eleanor stopped, eyes narrowing. What happened? You look flushed. Nothing. The air was close. Amelia danced with Ravensmore. Her mother's voice thrummed with excitement. He asked her specially, can you imagine? A duke. I knew this dress would catch attention. He asked her to dance, Cecilia said quietly. Once. Once is all it takes. Eleanor was already planning, her mind 3 steps ahead. We need to position her at the Thornbury garden party next week. He'll be there. He has to be. His daughter is friends with the Thornbury girl. Cecilia let the words wash over her. Her mother's voice, her brother's debts, her sister's future, all of it familiar as breathing. The weight she'd carried so long she'd stopped noticing it was weight at all. Decide for yourself. Not for them. Cece, Thomas again, pulling her aside with hands that shook slightly. The smell of whiskey was stronger now. I need your help. What did you do? Nothing bad. Just, I borrowed some money from the wrong people. His eyes skated away from hers. I thought the investment would pay off. It didn't. How much? £2,000. The number punched the air from her lungs. Thomas, I know, but I have a plan. He leaned in, voice dropping. There's this opportunity. A sure thing. I just need a little more capital to... No. Cece, please. You always figure something out. Just talk to Mother, or maybe sell some of the silver, or... We don't have silver to sell. We pawned the last of it 6 months ago for Amelia's coming-out gown. Cecilia's voice was flat. Where did you borrow the money from? Thomas's silence was answer enough. Who, Thomas? Blackwood. Marcus Blackwood, a moneylender who operated just on the acceptable side of legal and charged interest that compounded like a disease. You idiot. The words came out cold. That's not borrowing. That's suicide. I'll fix it. I always do. No, I always do. The truth of it sat bitter on her tongue. I fix it, I find the money, I make the excuses, I clean up the mess. So you'll help? She looked at her brother, handsome, charming, 23, and certain that someone would always catch him when he fell. Because someone always had. I don't know, she said, and watched confusion cross his face. She'd never said that before. Thus, the carriage ride home was silent. Amelia chattered about her dances, her triumphs, the way Lord Hartwell had looked at her. Eleanor planned and schemed, already 3 parties ahead. Thomas dozed in the corner, whiskey loose and thoughtless. Cecilia looked out the window at London passing by, gas lamps and cobblestones, grand houses giving way to modest ones, wealth bleeding into respectability, bleeding into quiet desperation. The Harrow townhouse sat in the latter category. Respectable address, peeling paint hidden by ivy, servants reduced to a cook, a maid, and a man of all work who was 70 if he was a day. Inside, Cecilia went to her room, the smallest bedroom, the one that had been the nursery before Amelia outgrew it. She sat at the tiny desk wedged under the eaves and pulled out the household ledger. Numbers didn't lie. The accounts were a careful fiction she maintained, moving money like a shell game, borrowing from one column to fill another, praying nothing unexpected would topple the whole structure. Thomas's new debt would topple it. There was no room left for another disaster. She touched the Duke's card, still in her pocket. Security, status, freedom from your family's debts. It wasn't love. He'd been clear about that. But when had love ever been part of her calculations? Love was for girls like Amelia, who could afford to choose. Cecilia's currency was duty, and she'd spent it all without ever asking what she might buy for herself. A knock at the door. Come in. Her mother entered, still in her ballroom finery, smelling of champagne and expensive borrowed perfume. We need to talk about Amelia's wardrobe for the Thornberry party. The rose silk, I think, with the... She stopped, seeing Cecilia's face. What's wrong? Nothing. Don't lie to me. You look... Eleanor moved closer, and for a moment something almost like concern crossed her features. Did something happen tonight? Cecilia could tell her. Could lay it all out. The Duke's offer, Thomas's debt, the impossible choice forming in her mind. But her mother would see only one thing, an opportunity, a sacrifice Cecilia could make, should make, the way she always had. I'm tired, Cecilia said instead. It was a long night. It was a successful night. Eleanor's smile returned. Amelia was radiant. Even the Pemberton herself commented on it. And if Ravensmore showed interest, he danced with her once, Mother. That's all. Once is how it starts. Eleanor moved to the door, then paused. You did well tonight, Cecilia, standing with me, making Amelia look good by comparison. I know it's not easy for you, watching her have what you... She stopped. Well, you've always understood your role in this family. I appreciate that. The door closed. Cecilia sat in the dark, her mother's words settling like sediment. Your role in this family. The girl who held everything together. The daughter who didn't need attention because she was too useful being invisible. The sister whose plainness made Amelia's beauty more remarkable. The woman who would never be chosen because being chosen would mean abandoning the post she'd been raised to hold. She pulled out the Duke's card again. Read the address in lamplight. Decide for yourself. Not for them. For the first time in her life, Cecilia allowed herself to imagine it. A different house. A different life. A child who needed her not because she was obligated, but because she chose to stay. No love, no romance. Just something that belonged to her. Something that wasn't sacrifice. The thought felt like treason. It also felt like air. Morning came with her mother's voice slicing through the bedroom door. Cecilia, the seamstress is here for Amelia's fitting. I need you to manage the household accounts while I supervise. Cecilia dressed without looking in the mirror. Another habit, another efficiency. Downstairs, the seamstress had transformed the drawing room into a workspace of fabric and pins, and Amelia stood on a stool like a princess being crowned. The rose silk her mother had chosen caught the light expensively. Higher on the left shoulder, Eleanor directed. No, higher. The neckline should draw attention without being vulgar. Cecilia moved past them toward her father's study, where the household ledgers lived in a drawer that stuck. The morning light showed every crack in the room's respectability. The faded curtains, the carpet worn thin at the threshold, the empty spaces on the shelves where books had been sold during last winter's coal shortage. She opened the ledger and stared at numbers that refused to add up correctly, no matter how many times she rearranged them. Thomas's debt sat in her mind like a stone. £2,000 to Blackwood, who didn't negotiate or forgive. She'd seen what happened to families who couldn't pay Blackwood. Furniture claimed, houses sold, sons disappearing to avoid debtor's prison. The Duke's card was in her pocket. She'd slept with it under her pillow like a talisman, though she couldn't say what she was warding off, disaster or possibility. Cece? Her father stood in the doorway. Gerald Harrow looked older than his 50 years, his face mapped with the consequence of optimism, repeatedly disappointed. He'd been handsome once, charming enough to marry above his station, clever enough to believe every investment would be the one that restored their fortune. Morning, Papa. Your mother said Thomas borrowed money again. He didn't come into the room, just hovered at the threshold like a guest. Is it bad? It's £2,000 to Marcus Blackwood. The color drained from her father's face. We can't. I know. Maybe if I sold the estate shares, or, no, those are already mortgaged. The rail investment might pay out soon, though. Henderson said by autumn, Papa? Cecilia kept her voice gentle. Henderson said that last autumn, and the autumn before. Gerald's shoulders sagged. I thought this one was different. He always thought that. Every scheme, every opportunity, every gentleman at the club with a sure thing. Her father chased salvation like other men chased foxes, with enthusiasm that never accounted for the cliff ahead. I'll figure something out, Cecilia said. Relief flooded his features, quick and shameful. You always do. Don't know what we'd do without you, Cece. You're the sensible one. He left her alone with that praise, the kind that felt like chains dressed up as compliments. She pulled out the Duke's card, turned it over in her hands. The address was in Mayfair, naturally. Old money didn't announce itself with new neighborhoods. The decision was forming before she let herself name it. 3 days. She'd give herself 3 days to find another solution. If she couldn't, the study door flew open. Thomas stumbled in, still in last night's clothes, eyes red-rimmed and desperate. You talked to Blackwood? He demanded. I haven't talked to anyone. Well, someone did. He sent a man this morning. To the house, Cece. He stood on our steps where the neighbors could see and said I had 1 week to produce the full amount, or he'd take payment in other ways. Thomas's hand shook. He knows about Amelia. He mentioned her specifically, said a pretty girl could settle debts if her brother couldn't. Ice slid down Cecilia's spine. He threatened Amelia? Not directly, but the implication. Thomas collapsed into a chair. I messed up. I know I did. But I can fix it. I just need time. You need £2,000. I need you to talk to Mother, sell something. There has to be. There's nothing left to sell. The words came out harder than she intended. We've sold everything that wasn't nailed down, and half of what was. The silver, the paintings, grandmother's jewelry. All of it gone, Thomas. Fed into the hole you keep digging. So that's it? You're just going to let Blackwood. I'm going to think. Cecilia stood, pressing her hands flat on the desk to keep them steady. For once in my life, I'm going to think about what I want instead of just fixing your mistakes. Thomas stared at her like she'd started speaking a foreign language. What's gotten into you? Nothing. Everything. She moved toward the door. I need air. Cece, wait. But she was already walking, through the drawing room where Amelia preened in expensive silk they couldn't afford, past her mother giving instructions about hemlines and social strategy, out into the street where London's morning traffic provided anonymous noise. She walked without direction, letting her feet choose. They carried her toward the park, the Serpentine glinting in morning sun, nurses with children, couples strolling, people whose problems weren't written in ledgers with red ink. "Miss Harrow!" The voice stopped her. She turned. Ravensmore stood under a tree, dressed for riding, a black horse tethered nearby. Beside him, a small figure in a navy blue dress sat on a bench, dark braids catching sunlight. His daughter, Eliza. "Your Grace!" Cecilia's mind scrambled for etiquette. "I didn't expect— We ride in the morning when we're in London." He gestured to the child. "Eliza, this is Miss Harrow, the lady I mentioned." The girl looked up. 9 years old, he'd said, but her eyes were older, the kind of old that came from loss, not years. She had her father's dark coloring and something of his severe features, but where his face showed exhaustion, hers showed anger, held carefully in check. "You're the one he wants to hire," Eliza said flatly. We haven't discussed— He told me he found someone who might stay longer than the others." The child's gaze was direct, assessing. "They always say that at first." Ravensmore's jaw tightened. "Eliza, it's true." She stood, brushing invisible dust from her skirt. "Miss Patterson stayed 3 months. Miss Thornberry lasted 6 weeks. Miss Aldridge cried every night and left without saying goodbye." "That's enough." "You asked me to be honest with you. I'm being honest." Eliza turned to Cecilia. "Do you know how to ride?" The question caught her off balance. "Yes, a little." "Do you cry easily?" "No." "Do you think children should be seen and not heard?" Cecilia glanced at Ravensmore, who was watching the exchange with something that might have been curiosity, or might have been dread. "I think," Cecilia said carefully, "that children should be heard when they have something worth saying, and you seem to have several things worth saying." Eliza's expression shifted slightly, surprise breaking through the careful blankness. "The other governesses said I was difficult," she said. "Maybe they were the difficult ones." A sound escaped the girl, almost a laugh, quickly suppressed. She looked at her father. "I like her better than the last 3. "High praise," Ravensmore said dryly. Eliza walked back to the horse, ending the conversation on her terms. Ravensmore moved closer to Cecilia, his voice dropping. "You're out early." "Family troubles." "The kind that make Duke's offers more attractive?" She should have been offended by the directness. Instead, she felt relief. Someone who didn't pretend, didn't dress up reality in polite fictions. Possibly. "I'm returning to Ravensmore Hall in 4 days." He said it without pressure, just information. "If you want to see what you'd be agreeing to before you decide." "That's presumptuous?" A ghost of humor touched his mouth. "I've been called worse, but I meant what I said on the terrace. I need someone who won't run when things get hard. Eliza needs someone who won't see her as a problem to be managed." Cecilia watched the girl stroking the horse's neck, whispering something too quiet to hear. The anger in her was visible, a living thing coiled tight, waiting for the next excuse to strike out. "What happened to her mother?" she asked quietly. Ravensmore's face went blank. "She died giving birth." Eliza knows this. She also knows her mother didn't want children, didn't want to be pregnant, and died angry about it. He said it like reciting facts, but the pain underneath was audible. The last thing her mother said was that she wished she'd never married me. The honesty of it was brutal. Cecilia couldn't find words. "So now you know," Ravensmore continued. "My daughter is angry at a dead woman who has every right to be angry at me, and I don't know how to tell her that sometimes love isn't enough to make people want to stay." He looked at Cecilia. "I'm not offering you romance, Miss Harrow. I'm offering you a chance to build something real with people who won't take you for granted." Before she could answer, Eliza called out, "Can we go now? I'm bored." Ravensmore nodded. "Think about visiting Ravensmore Hall. Send word if you decide yes." He was helping Eliza onto the horse when Cecilia heard herself say, "I'll come." Both of them turned. "I'll come," she repeated, the words feeling both reckless and inevitable. "In 4 days." Ravensmore's nod was brief, but something eased in his posture. "I'll send a carriage." Eliza studied Cecilia with those 2 old eyes. "Don't come if you're going to leave." "I won't leave," Cecilia said, and felt the weight of the promise even as she made it. They rode off, leaving her standing in morning sunlight with a decision that felt both terrifying and necessary. She walked home slowly, the Duke's offer solidifying in her mind. 4 days to see Ravensmore Hall, to understand what she'd be choosing, to decide if she could really do this, trade one family for another, one set of obligations for something that might possibly be more. The house was quiet when she returned. Her mother had taken Amelia to a morning call. Her father was out, at his club probably, drinking away the discomfort of knowing his family was drowning and he couldn't swim. Thomas was waiting in the drawing room, pacing. "Where have you been?" "Walking." "For 2 hours?" His eyes were wild. "Blackwood's man came back. Left another message. Said the interest compounds daily, and if I don't—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "Cece, I'm scared." She'd never heard him say that before. Thomas, who sailed through life on charm and confidence, admitting fear. "I'm going away for a few days," she said. "What? Now? You can't—" "I can." The words came out firm. "I'm going to visit an estate in the north. When I come back, I'll have a solution." "What kind of solution?" Cecilia looked at her brother, handsome, reckless, 23, and still waiting for someone else to fix his mistakes. She loved him. She also saw him clearly for the first time, stripped of the excuses she'd been making for years. "The kind where you learn to solve your own problems," she said quietly. Thomas's face went red. "That's not fair. You're my sister, and you're my brother, which means you should care that I've spent my entire adult life cleaning up after you instead of living my own life." The anger surprised her, how close to the surface it had been waiting. "I'm 25 years old, Thomas. I've never been courted, never traveled, never had a season or a debut or any of the things Amelia gets handed without question, because I was too busy managing the accounts and settling your debts and making sure Mother didn't notice how close we are to ruin." "I didn't ask you to do that." "You didn't have to. I did it because I thought that's what family meant." She moved toward the stairs. "I'm going to pack. Don't tell Mother where I'm going. Tell her I'm visiting Aunt Margaret if she asks." "Aunt Margaret's been dead for 3 years." "Then tell her I'm visiting a friend." "I don't care." Cecilia stopped on the landing. "1 week, Thomas. When I come back, things are going to be different." She didn't wait for his response. In her small room under the eaves, she pulled out the battered traveling case that had been her grandmother's. The lock was broken, the leather cracked, but it was hers. She packed carefully. 2-day dresses, a nicer gown for dinner, undergarments, the book of poetry she'd bought with money saved from household economies over 6 months. At the bottom of the case, she placed the household ledger. Evidence, proof of years spent balancing the impossible. A knock interrupted her. "Come in." Amelia slipped through the door, still in the rose silk, looking uncertain in a way she rarely did. "Thomas said you're leaving." "For a few days." "Where?" Amelia sat on the bed, smoothing her skirts. "Mother's going to be furious if you miss the Thornberry party." "Let her be furious." Her sister's eyes widened. "Are you ill? You never talk back." "Maybe I should have started years ago." Cecilia folded a chemise, tucking it carefully into the case. "You look beautiful in that dress." "I know." Amelia said it without ego, just fact. "Mother says if Ravensmore saw me in this, he'd propose within a month." Cecilia's hand stilled. "Do you want him to propose?" "I don't know. He's old and scary looking." Amelia picked at a thread on her dress. "But he's a duke. Mother says I could do worse." "You could also do better." "How?" "I'm pretty, but we don't have money. Pretty without money gets you a second son or a widower, maybe a baronet if you're lucky." Her sister's voice held the same trapped quality Cecilia knew in her own. "At least a duke would be impressive." "Even if you don't love him?" "Love?" Amelia laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Mother says love is for people who can afford it. We can't." The words hit harder than they should have. Her sister, 17, beautiful, supposedly the one with options, was just as caged as Cecilia. Different bars, same prison. "What if I told you," Cecilia said slowly, "that Ravensmore isn't interested in you?" Amelia's head snapped up. "What?" "He asked me, not to dance, to marry." Silence fell like a curtain. Amelia stared at her, emotions flickering too fast to name, shock, confusion, something that might have been relief before hurt covered it. "You?" The word came out small. "Why would he? You're not—" She stopped, color flooding her cheeks. "I didn't mean—" It's all right. Cecilia kept packing, not looking at her sister. I know what I am, so does he. That's why he asked. Does Mother know? No. Are you going to tell her? Eventually. Cecilia closed the case, fastening the broken clasp as best she could. After I decide if I'm going to say yes. Amelia was quiet for a long moment, then softly, Do you want to say yes? The question was genuine, maybe the first genuine thing her sister had asked her in years. I don't know, Cecilia admitted. He's offering security, protection, a child who needs someone, but no love. He was very clear about that. And you're considering it. I'm considering having a life that's mine. She looked at Amelia. Does that make me selfish? Her sister's laugh was bitter. If it does, then I'm selfish too. Because I'd take security over love in a heartbeat if it meant I didn't have to smile at men twice my age and pretend I find them fascinating. They looked at each other, two sisters, both trapped, both starting to see the bars clearly. The Duke has a daughter, Cecilia said. 9 years old, angry, difficult. He needs someone who can reach her. Can you? I don't know, but I want to try. The admission felt like opening a window. For once, I want to try something that's for me. Amelia stood, moved to the door, then turned back. I hope you say yes, and I hope... She paused. I hope when you leave, you don't look back. The door closed softly. Cecilia sat on the bed, surrounded by the debris of packing, and let herself cry, not from sadness, but from the terrifying relief of a decision finally forming. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended state. Her mother noticed her distraction but attributed it to women's troubles and left her alone. Thomas avoided her, sulking in his room or out at the club spending money they didn't have. Her father asked once where she was going and accepted her vague answer without pressing. Only Amelia seemed to really see her, and the look in her sister's eyes was complicated, envy mixed with something like pride. On the morning of this fourth day, a carriage arrived. Black, elegant, the Ravensmore crest discreet on the door. The driver handed her a note in the Duke's precise handwriting. The journey is 6 hours. There are books in the carriage if you need distraction. Come prepared to stay 3 days. Cecilia left her family without ceremony. No dramatic goodbye, no announcement. She simply walked out the door with her grandmother's battered case and climbed into a Duke's carriage. And if her hands shook slightly as they pulled away from the only home she'd ever known, she didn't let herself look back to see if anyone was watching from the windows. The countryside unrolled in shades of green, London giving way to estates, villages, open land. Cecilia read one of the books Ravensmore had provided, A History of Northern Estates, but her mind wouldn't focus. Instead, she watched the world change outside the window and wondered what she was driving toward. Ravensmore Hall appeared as dusk fell, a sprawl of gray stone and ancient timber, ivy-covered walls and mullioned windows that caught fading light, larger than she'd expected. Older. The kind of place that had stood through centuries and would stand through centuries more, indifferent to the small human dramas played out within its walls. The carriage stopped. A butler opened the door, elderly, formal, his expression carefully neutral. Miss Harrow, His Grace is expecting you. Inside, the hall was all dark wood and darker paintings, suits of armor standing guard, a staircase that swept up into shadows. Cecilia felt suddenly small, a girl playing at belonging in a place built for duchesses and power. Cecilia! Ravensmore descended the stairs, still in riding clothes, looking more at ease here than he had in London's ballrooms. Behind him, moving slower, came Eliza. Your journey was comfortable? Yes, thank you. Eliza will show you to your room. We dress for dinner, but nothing formal tonight. He glanced at his daughter. Be polite. Eliza rolled her eyes, a flash of child beneath the anger, and gestured for Cecilia to follow. They climbed the stairs in silence. The girl led her down a corridor lined with portraits of severe-looking Ravensmore ancestors, past doors that probably hid rooms larger than Cecilia's entire house in London. This one's yours, Eliza said, opening a door. The room took Cecilia's breath, huge with a 4-poster bed draped in midnight blue, a fireplace already lit, windows overlooking grounds that stretched into darkness. Her battered case sat on the luggage rack like a confession. The other governesses got the small room in the west wing, Eliza said. Father put you here because you're different. Different how? I don't know yet. The girl studied her with those two old eyes. But if you're going to leave, do it now, before I... She stopped, started again. Before I start thinking you might stay. Cecilia knelt, bringing herself to the child's level. What made the others leave? I did. No shame in the admission, just fact. I put frogs in Miss Patterson's bed. I told Miss Thornberry I saw my mother's ghost in her room every night. I convinced Miss Aldridge the staff was poisoning her food. Were they? Eliza blinked, surprised. No. Then why did she believe you? Because she was stupid. The girl's jaw set. They were all stupid. They came here thinking they could fix me, make me into some perfect little girl who'd be grateful they stayed. Her voice dropped. I don't want to be fixed. I want. She didn't finish. The vulnerability in her face shut down as quickly as it had appeared. What do you want? Cecilia asked gently. Nothing. Eliza backed toward the door. Dinner's at 8. Don't be late. Father hates lateness. She was gone before Cecilia could respond. Alone in the beautiful room, Cecilia unpacked her meager belongings, hanging her dresses in a wardrobe that could have held 20 wardrobes. The contrast was absurd, her worn cotton next to mahogany and silk lining. But the view from the window steadied her. Grounds rolling into darkness, the kind of space that made London's cramped streets feel like a different world entirely. She could breathe here. That alone felt revolutionary. At 8 precisely, she made her way downstairs. A servant directed her to the dining room, another vast space, a table that could seat 30, set for 3 at one end. Ravensmore stood when she entered, and so did Eliza, though the child's posture radiated reluctance. You found the room acceptable? He asked. It's beautiful. It was my mother's. She preferred the east wing light. He pulled out Cecilia's chair himself, a courtesy that felt strange. Eliza and I eat together when we're in residence. I don't believe in children dining separately. They sat. Servants brought soup, something rich with cream and herbs. Cecilia waited to see how Eliza handled her spoon before picking up her own. My father says you're considering marrying him, Eliza said abruptly. Eliza, Ravensmore's voice held warning. What? You said we should be honest. The girl looked at Cecilia. Are you? I'm considering it, Cecilia said. Why? He's old and grumpy and he works all the time. I'm 42 and sitting right here, Ravensmore said dryly. It's true, though. Eliza turned to her father. You do work all the time, and you're grumpy most mornings before breakfast. Noted. He looked at Cecilia. My daughter has inherited her mother's talent for uncomfortable honesty. It's better than lying, Eliza shot back. The conversation continued in that vein, sharp, direct, nothing like the careful performances Cecilia was used to. Ravensmore didn't coddle his daughter, and Eliza didn't perform for him. They circled each other like two people who cared deeply but had forgotten how to show it without armor. After dinner, Eliza was sent to bed under protest. Ravensmore led Cecilia to a study lined with books, a fire burning low, 2 chairs positioned for conversation. She likes you, he said, pouring brandy without asking if she wanted it. She threatened me with frogs. That's how you know she's interested. He handed her a glass. The governesses she hated, she ignored. The ones she liked, she tested. Cecilia sipped the brandy. It burned perfectly. What happened to her mother, really? Ravensmore was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was stripped of pretense. Catherine and I married for all the wrong reasons. Alliance, duty, expectation. We tried to make it work, but... He stopped. She didn't want children. I pushed anyway, thinking it would fix things. It didn't. She died hating me for forcing her into a role she never chose. He looked at Cecilia. Eliza knows this. I've never lied to her about it. Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe it was honesty, Cecilia said quietly. She's angry all the time. At me, at Catherine, at herself for existing. Ravensmore's hands tightened on his glass. I don't know how to reach her anymore. Maybe you don't need to reach her. Maybe you just need to stand beside her and not flinch when she lashes out. He looked at her sharply. You sound like you speak from experience. I have a brother who's been making mistakes for years while I cleaned them up. The brandy was making her reckless with truth. I thought I was helping him, but really, I was just making it easier for him to keep failing. And now? Now I'm here. deciding if I want to keep being the person who fixes everything or if I want to try being someone who builds something new. Ravensmore nodded slowly. That's what I'm offering. Not fixing, building. They sat in silence, the fire crackling, the weight of complicated truths settling between them. 3 days, he said finally. Spend them here. Get to know Eliza. See what this life would actually look like. Then decide. Cecilia raised her glass in a small salute. 3 days. That night, lying in the Duchess's former room, listening to an unfamiliar house settle into sleep, Cecilia felt something shift inside her. This place, this life, this strange, broken family, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't love. But it was honest. And honesty, she was starting to realize, might be worth more than all the sacrifices she'd been making in the name of duty. Tomorrow she'd spend the day with Eliza. Tomorrow she'd see if this child could accept her, if this life could hold her, if she was brave enough to choose it. But tonight, for the first time in years, Cecilia fell asleep not planning how to solve someone else's problems, but wondering what it might feel like to build something entirely her own. Morning at Ravensmore Hall came with birdsong instead of her mother's demands, a luxury Cecilia hadn't known she craved. She dressed carefully in her simplest day dress and found her way downstairs by following the smell of breakfast. The dining room was empty except for Eliza, who sat at the far end of the long table with a book propped against a pitcher of milk. She didn't look up when Cecilia entered. Good morning, Cecilia said. Father already ate. He's in the study working on estate business. Eliza turned a page. You can eat wherever you want. We don't have rules about that here. Cecilia took a seat across from her, close enough for conversation, but not intrusive. A servant appeared with tea and toast, scrambled eggs, bacon that smelled like heaven. What are you reading? A book about Vikings. Eliza finally looked up. Did you know they let women own property and divorce their husbands if the husbands were useless? I didn't. Most people don't. Everyone thinks women in history just sat around being pretty and doing what men told them to. The girl's eyes challenged Cecilia to disagree. But that's not true. Some of them were warriors. Some ran entire estates. Some killed people who deserved it. Sounds like you've thought about this. I think about a lot of things. Eliza closed the book. Father says I think too much and should spend more time on needlework and dancing. Do you want to spend more time on needlework and dancing? No, needlework is boring and dancing is stupid. Cecilia bit back a smile. What would you rather do? Ride, read, learn about things that matter. Eliza's jaw set stubbornly. Miss Patterson said proper young ladies don't need to know about Vikings or battles or anything interesting. She said I should focus on being pleasant. What happened to Miss Patterson? I told her the Vikings would have thrown her overboard for being useless. A flash of satisfaction crossed the girl's face. She cried and left the next day. That was cruel. Eliza's expression hardened. She was cruel first. She kept telling me my mother would be disappointed in who I was becoming. Like she knew anything about my mother. The pain underneath the anger was visible, raw. Cecilia chose her next words carefully. It sounds like Miss Patterson was trying to make you into someone you're not. Everyone tries to do that. Eliza pushed her plate away. Father wants me to be less angry. The servants want me to be easier to manage. The governesses wanted me to be grateful they stayed. Her voice dropped. No one just wants me to be me. I do. The girl's head snapped up. You don't even know me. Not yet, but I'd like to. Cecilia met her eyes. What if we made a deal? You show me who you really are, Vikings and anger and all of it, and I won't try to make you into someone else. Eliza studied her with that too-old gaze, searching for the lie. And what do you get? Honesty, which is worth more than pleasantness. A long silence, then, do you ride? Yes. Well? Challenge in the word. Well enough not to fall off. Then come on. Eliza stood abruptly. I want to show you something. They went to the stables, a sprawling building that smelled of hay and horse and leather. Eliza moved through it with the confidence of someone who'd spent more time with animals than people. She led Cecilia to a stall at the end where a gray mare waited. This is Tempest. She's mine. The girl's voice softened. Father gave her to me after my mother died. Said I needed something that was just mine. The mare nuzzled Eliza's hand, gentle despite the aggressive name. She's beautiful. She's more than that. She's mine. Eliza looked at Cecilia. If you're going to stay, you need to understand that I have things here that matter. Not just Father's estate or the house. Things that are mine. I understand. They saddled horses, Tempest for Eliza, a calmer bay for Cecilia, and rode out into grounds that stretched farther than Cecilia had realized. Open fields giving way to woods, a stream cutting silver through green, the kind of landscape that made London feel like a distant fever dream. Eliza rode hard, testing Cecilia's claimed competence. They galloped across a meadow, jumped a low stone wall, pushed through a thicket that caught at Cecilia's skirts. The girl glanced back repeatedly, waiting for complaint or fear. Cecilia gave her neither. Finally, Eliza slowed at the edge of a clearing where an old oak tree stood massive and ancient. She dismounted, tying Tempest to a low branch, and Cecilia followed. "This is my place," Eliza said. "No one else comes here, not even Father." The tree's roots had created natural seats worn smooth by use. Carved into the trunk were initials, ER, and others Cecilia couldn't make out. "I come here when I'm angry," the girl continued, "which is most of the time." "What makes you angry?" "Everything." Eliza sat, pulling her knees to her chest. "People lying, people pretending they care when they don't, people saying my mother is watching over me from heaven when I know she's just dead." Her voice cracked. "She didn't want me. Father told me the truth about that. Everyone else lies and says she loved me really, deep down. But he said she died hating that I existed." The brutal honesty of it punched the air from Cecilia's lungs. She sat carefully beside the girl. "That must be the hardest truth anyone's ever told you." "Yes." Eliza's eyes were dry, but pain lived in every line of her small body. "But at least it's true. At least he didn't lie." "Do you wish he had?" "Sometimes. Most of the time." The girl looked at the carved initials. "But then I remember Miss Aldridge telling me how much my mother loved me, how she was an angel now, how I should be grateful she gave her life for me. And I wanted to scream because it was all lies, pretty, useless lies." "Your father was trying to be honest with you," Cecilia said quietly, "even when the truth hurt. Is that what you do? If you stayed?" "Yes." Eliza picked at the bark, not looking at Cecilia. "The other governesses lied about everything. They said I was pretty when I'm not. They said I was clever in ways I'm not. They made up stories about my mother being perfect." Her jaw tightened. "I hate liars more than anything." "Then I won't lie to you. Even if the truth hurts?" "Even then." The girl was silent for a long moment. Then, "Do you think I'm difficult?" Cecilia considered. "I think you're angry. That's different. Father says my anger will make people dislike me. People who matter won't." Eliza looked at her then, really looked. "You're different from the others." "How?" "You don't treat me like I'm broken. You just—" She struggled for words. "You just sit here like this is normal. Being angry when you've been hurt is normal." Something in Eliza's expression shifted. A crack in the armor, vulnerability bleeding through. She opened her mouth to say something, then stopped. Hoofbeats interrupted them. Ravensmore appeared through the trees, riding a black stallion that matched his severe appearance. His face was tight with something Cecilia couldn't read. "Eliza, back to the house. Now." The girl's walls slammed back up. "Why?" "Because I said so." His voice was sharp, unusual. "Go." Eliza looked between them, then mounted Tempest with jerky movements. She rode off without another word, leaving Cecilia alone with the Duke. "What's wrong?" Cecilia asked. "A rider came from London. Your brother is here." Ice slid through her veins. "Thomas? Here?" "Arrived an hour ago, demanding to see you." Ravensmore's jaw was tight. "With a man I recognize, Marcus Blackwood." The world tilted. "No, he wouldn't—" "He did." Ravensmore dismounted, moving closer. "Whatever trouble he's brought, we need to deal with it now, before it touches Eliza." They rode back in silence, broken only by hoofbeats and Cecilia's racing thoughts. "Thomas here, with Blackwood. The debt must have reached a breaking point, but why come here? How had he even known where she was?" The answer hit her as they approached the house. Amelia. Her sister had known, must have told him when he demanded answers. In the courtyard, 2 horses stood lathered and tired. Through the drawing-room window, Cecilia could see Thomas pacing while a heavy-set man with a cruel face sat watching. Blackwood. "Let me handle this," Ravensmore said. "No." Cecilia dismounted. "He's my brother. My problem." "Not anymore." The Duke's voice was firm. "The moment you accepted my invitation, this became our problem. And I don't negotiate with men like Blackwood." They entered together. Thomas spun around, relief and desperation warring on his face. "Cece, thank heaven, I've been going mad trying to find you. How did you know I was here?" Her voice came out colder than she'd intended. "Amelia told me. She said you were visiting a duke, and I thought—" He stopped, seeing Ravensmore. Recognition dawned. You're the one who—" "At the ball?" "Thomas Harrow." Ravensmore's voice could have frozen water. "And Marcus Blackwood. Uninvited guests." Blackwood stood slowly. He was shorter than Thomas, but twice as dangerous, with eyes that calculated worth like a butcher weighing meat. "Your Grace," the title dripped mockery. "Forgive the intrusion, but young Mr. Harrow here owes me a considerable sum, and when he mentioned his sister was visiting a duke, I thought perhaps we could discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement. Get out of my house. Now, let's be civilized." Blackwood's smile was reptilian. £2,000, Your Grace, plus interest. A trifling sum for a man of your means, but devastating for a family like the Harrows. His gaze slid to Cecilia, unless, of course, other arrangements could be made. The implication was vile and clear. Cecilia's hands clenched. "Thomas," she said quietly, "why did you bring him here?" "I didn't have a choice," her brother's voice cracked. "He was threatening Amelia, the house, everything. Mother's jewelry is already gone. I pawned it last week trying to make a payment. Father's investments are worthless. We're drowning, Cece, and you disappeared, so you led a predator to my door. I thought the Duke could help. You're here. He clearly has interest in you. Maybe he'd sell me to clear your debts?" The words tasted like poison. Thomas's face went white. "No, I just thought, you thought I'd sacrifice myself again." Cecilia looked at her brother and saw him clearly. Not the charming boy she'd been protecting, but a man who'd learned that his mistakes would always be someone else's problem. "How much of the 2,000 was the original debt, Thomas?" His silence was damning. "How much?" 800, he whispered. "The rest is interest and fees." "You gambled away £800 and let it compound into 2,000. Her voice was steady, eerily calm. "And then you brought this man to the one place I might have found peace. I didn't know what else to do." Ravensmore stepped forward. "Mr. Blackwood, the debt you're owed, show me the papers." Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because I'm considering paying it. But I want to see the terms." Hope flared in Thomas's face. Cecilia felt something inside her crack. Blackwood produced a document from his coat. Ravensmore read it quickly, his expression growing darker. "These terms are usurious, illegal in most circumstances. But not in all." Blackwood smiled. "Young Mr. Harrow signed willingly, knew the risks." "Did you?" Ravensmore looked at Thomas. "Did you read this before signing?" Thomas's face answered. "He signed his family's property as collateral," Ravensmore continued, voice deadly quiet, "including his mother's dower house and his sister's dowry portions, money that wasn't his to stake." Cecilia's world lurched. "My dowry? I was going to win it back. You staked my future on a card game?" Her voice rose despite her attempt at control. "Thomas, that money was from grandmother. The only thing I had— I know, I'm sorry, but I can fix this if the Duke just—" "No?" The word came from Cecilia, not Ravensmore. "No, you can't fix this. You've never fixed anything in your life. Cece, please, I'm done." The words felt like jumping off a cliff. "I'm done cleaning up your disasters, done sacrificing my future for your mistakes, done being the one who holds everything together while you tear it apart." Thomas stared at her like she'd struck him. "You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more." Blackwood watched the exchange with interest. "Touching, but sentiment doesn't pay debts. Your Grace, are you willing to settle this matter, or shall I proceed with claiming the collateral?" Ravensmore looked at Cecilia. In his eyes, she saw a question. "What do you want?" For the first time, she knew the answer. Pay the original debt, she said. £800. Not the interest. Not the fees. What Thomas actually borrowed. Miss Harrow. Blackwood's voice hardened. The terms are illegal, Cecilia cut him off. You know it. We know it. You prey on desperate people and compound their suffering. She stepped closer to him, surprising herself with her own courage. Take the 800, or take nothing. If you push this, the Duke will have lawyers crawling through every transaction you've made in the last decade. How many of those contracts would survive scrutiny? Blackwood's face went dark with fury. You're making a mistake, girl. I've made plenty. This isn't one of them. A tense silence filled the room. Finally, Blackwood laughed. A harsh, ugly sound. £800, but the collateral stays marked until it's paid. And young Mr. Harrow here remains unwelcome at every establishment I influence. He looked at Thomas. Which is most of them. Agreed, Ravensmore said. He moved to a desk, wrote something quickly, handed it to Blackwood. A note to my banker. Take it to Coots. They'll settle the amount immediately. Blackwood took it, examined it, nodded. Pleasure doing business, Your Grace. His smile at Cecilia was pure malice. You've made an enemy today, Miss Harrow. Get out, Ravensmore said quietly. And if you return to my property without invitation, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Blackwood left, his footsteps echoing through the hall. The front door slammed. Thomas collapsed into a chair, head in his hands. Cece, Don't. She couldn't look at him. Just don't. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. I thought I could handle it, You thought someone would save you, mother, father, me. Cecilia's voice was empty. Someone always has. That's why you keep doing this. What am I supposed to do now? Blackwood will ruin me in London. I can't show my face anywhere. Maybe that's what you need. The words came out harsh. To face consequences for once instead of being protected from them. Thomas looked up, betrayal written across his face. You're my sister. And you're my brother. But that doesn't mean I have to destroy myself keeping you afloat. She moved toward the door, needing air, needing space. You need to leave, Thomas. Go back to London. Tell mother and father what happened. Figure out how to live with what you've done. Will you come back? The question hung in the air. Cecilia looked at Ravensmore, who stood silent, letting her choose. No, she said finally. I don't think I will. What about Amelia? Mother? They need you. They need to learn to manage without me. Cecilia's throat tightened. I've given 25 years to that family. I'm done giving. Thomas stood, swaying slightly. You've changed. Yes, I have. He left without another word. Through the window, Cecilia watched him mount his horse and ride away. A small figure, growing smaller, carrying the weight of his choices alone for the first time in his life. When the sound of hoofbeats faded, Ravensmore spoke. That was brave. That was terrifying. Cecilia's hands were shaking. She clasped them together to hide it. I just cut ties with my family. You set a boundary. There's a difference. Is there? She laughed, but it came out broken. I grew up believing family was everything, that you sacrificed for blood no matter what, and I just chose yourself. Ravensmore moved closer. That's not abandonment, that's survival. It feels like both. He didn't argue. They stood in silence, the enormity of what had just happened settling over them. The £800, Cecilia said finally. I'll pay you back, somehow. I don't know how, but consider it a wedding gift. She looked at him sharply. I haven't said yes yet. Then consider it an investment in your freedom. Either way, you don't owe me. His voice was firm. I didn't pay it for your brother. I paid it so you could make a choice without debt hanging over you. Why? Because I know what it's like to be trapped by obligation. Ravensmore's gaze was steady. My marriage to Catherine. I went into it out of duty, family pressure, social expectation. It destroyed us both. I won't watch someone else make that mistake. So this is charity? This is respect. He said it simply. For someone who's carried more than their share for too long. Cecilia felt something break open inside her. Not pain, but release. Years of holding everything together, years of being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who never complained because someone had to keep functioning. I don't know how to be free, she whispered. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. Ravensmore paused. If you stay. The question hung between them, quiet and enormous. Before Cecilia could answer, footsteps sounded in the hall. Eliza burst in, her face tight with fury. I heard everything. She looked at Cecilia. Your brother is horrible. Eliza. Ravensmore's voice held warning. He is. He came here and tried to use her to pay his debts, like she's something that can be sold. The girl's hands were fists. That's what my mother felt like. Father told me. Sold into a marriage she didn't want. Your mother's situation was different. Was it? Eliza's eyes blazed. Everyone wanted her to marry you because it was good for the families. No one asked what she wanted, just like no one asked Miss Harrow what she wanted before her brother tried to trade her. The parallel was uncomfortably accurate. Ravensmore looked at Cecilia, something like apology in his expression. Eliza's right, Cecilia said quietly. My family has been trading on my sacrifice for years. I just never named it that way before. Are you going to stay? Eliza asked. The anger in her voice couldn't quite hide the fear underneath. Or are you going to leave like everyone else? Cecilia stopped. This child, this damaged, angry child, was asking for something real, for commitment, for someone to choose her instead of running from the difficulty of loving her. I need to think, Cecilia said. That means no. Eliza's face shuddered. It always means no. It means I need time to make a decision this important. Cecilia knelt, bringing herself to the girl's level. You deserve honesty, remember? The truth is, I'm scared. Scared of making the wrong choice, scared of letting you down, scared of choosing this and having it not be enough. Everyone's scared, Eliza said. That's not an excuse. You're right, it's not. Cecilia stood. Give me until tomorrow. I'll have an answer by then. Promise? I promise. Eliza studied her for a long moment, then nodded. She left without another word, her footsteps loud in the quiet house. Ravensmore moved to pour himself a drink. She's right to be angry. Everyone leaves her. Have you? Every day. The admission came with difficulty. I work instead of spending time with her. I let governesses raise her instead of doing it myself. I'm here but not present, and she knows it. Why? Because I don't know how to be what she needs. He drank. Catherine died hating me. Eliza was born into that hatred, and I look at her and see all the ways I failed them both. So you're punishing yourself by staying distant. I'm protecting her from more disappointment. That's not protection. Cecilia's voice was gentle but firm. That's abandonment in a different form. Ravensmore's shoulders tightened. You don't understand. I understand sacrifice that isn't actually helping anyone. I've been doing it for years. She moved closer. You think distance protects her, but all it does is teach her that love means leaving. And you think you can fix that? His voice held challenge. Walk in here and heal years of damage? No, but I think I can stand beside her while she heals herself. If you let me. They looked at each other across the space between them. Two broken people, two different kinds of damage, both trying to figure out if healing was even possible. I should go, Cecilia said. Think about everything. Take the West Wing. There's a library there. Quiet. Ravensmore set down his glass. Whatever you decide, Cecilia, decide for yourself. Not for Eliza. Not for me. For you. She left him standing there, walked through halls that felt both foreign and strangely right, found the library he'd mentioned. It was everything he'd promised, quiet, beautiful, lined with books that spoke of centuries of knowledge. Cecilia sat in a chair near the window and let herself think. Her family would survive without her. They'd have to. Thomas would face consequences and maybe, finally, learn from them. Amelia would find her own way, with or without a duke. Her parents would manage, the way they'd been managing before Cecilia was old enough to shoulder the burden. And she could stay here, build something new, be mother to a child who desperately needed someone to choose her, be partner to a man who understood that respect mattered more than romance. It wasn't the life she'd imagined as a girl, but then that girl had imagined very little beyond duty. This was something else, something chosen. The door opened. Eliza slipped in, still in her riding clothes, her expression carefully neutral. I'm not supposed to bother you, she said. You're not bothering me. The girl moved closer, hesitant. Can I ask you something? Yes. If you stay... Eliza stopped, started again. If you marry father, does that mean you'd be my mother? The question was loaded with hope and terror in equal measure. I don't know, Cecilia said honestly. I think it means I'd be someone who cares about you, someone who stays. What we call that, we'd figure it out together. The other governesses wanted me to call them mother. I refused. Good. Eliza blinked. Good? You can't force that. It has to be earned. Cecilia held the girl's gaze. If I stay, I don't want you to call me anything you're not ready to call me. I just want you to trust that I'm not leaving. How can I trust that? Everyone leaves. Because I'll prove it every day, by staying even when things are hard. Cecilia paused. Your father said you test people. Put frogs in their beds. Tell them ghost stories. Try to drive them away. Yes. Why? Because it's easier when they leave because I'm difficult than when they leave because I'm not worth staying for. The admission came out small, broken. Cecilia's heart cracked. Oh, Eliza, don't feel sorry for me. I hate that. I don't feel sorry for you. I understand you. Cecilia stood, moved closer. I've spent years making myself useful so people wouldn't notice I wasn't chosen. You make yourself difficult so you can control when people leave. Different strategies, same fear. Eliza's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Are you going to stay? Do you want me to? I don't know, maybe. The girl's voice was rough. You're different from the others. You don't lie. You don't try to fix me. You just... She stopped, struggling. You make me think maybe I could be worth staying for. You are worth staying for. You barely know me. I know enough. Cecilia knelt again, bringing herself eye level with this fierce, damaged child. I know you're angry and honest and brave enough to say what you feel. I know you love your horse and your Vikings and your father even though he doesn't know how to love you back the right way. I know you're scared that if you let yourself hope, you'll just get hurt again. A tear escaped, tracking down Eliza's cheek. She wiped it away angrily. I don't cry. Everyone cries. Not me. Crying is weak. Crying is honest. Cecilia reached out slowly, giving the girl time to pull away. She didn't. Cecilia touched her shoulder gently. And you value honesty above everything, remember? Eliza broke then, not dramatically, but quietly, leaning into Cecilia's touch like a flower bending toward sun. More tears came, silent and devastating. Cecilia held her, this child who'd learned too young that love meant leaving, and made a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable. I'm staying, she said quietly. If you'll have me. Eliza pulled back, searching her face. Promise? I promise. Even when I'm difficult? Especially then. The girl nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand. Okay. But I'm not calling you mother. I wouldn't expect you to. And I still get to ride whenever I want. Within reason. And no more governesses. Agreed. Eliza studied her for a long moment. Then, so quietly, Cecilia almost missed it. Thank you. The words held everything, gratitude and fear and desperate hope all tangled together. Before Cecilia could respond, Ravensmore appeared in the doorway. He took in the scene, Eliza's tear-stained face, Cecilia's hand on her shoulder, the shift in the air between them. I'm staying, Cecilia said, looking at him. If the offer still stands. Something crossed his face, relief, gratitude, something deeper he didn't name. It stands. Good. Eliza stood suddenly businesslike, her armor sliding back into place now that her father was watching. Then we need to plan the wedding, and I want to help design your wedding dress. And we should have the ceremony here, not in London, because London is awful, and... Eliza, Ravensmore said gently, let Miss Harrow breathe. But there was warmth in his voice. The first real warmth Cecilia had heard from him. He looked at his daughter with something approaching wonder, as if he'd forgotten she could be happy and was seeing it again for the first time. The moment was broken by footsteps in the hall, rapid, urgent. A servant appeared, out of breath. Your Grace, a writer from London. There's been... He swallowed. There's been an incident concerning Miss Harrow's family. Ice flooded Cecilia's veins. What kind of incident? A fire, miss. At the Harrow residence. The writer said... The servant looked at Ravensmore helplessly. He said you should come immediately. The world tilted. Cecilia's hands went numb. Was anyone hurt? Her voice sounded distant, belonging to someone else. They don't know yet, miss. The fire was still burning when the rider left. Ravensmore was already moving. Prepare the carriage. Fast horses. We leave in 10 minutes. Your Grace. Now. The servant fled. Ravensmore turned to Cecilia. Pack quickly. Whatever you need for London. I'm coming too, Eliza said. Absolutely not. She's my family now. The girl's voice was fierce. Where she goes, I go. Father and daughter stared at each other. Ravensmore broke first. Fine, but you stay in the carriage unless I say otherwise. They scattered, Cecilia to pack, Eliza to change, Ravensmore to organize the journey. Cecilia's hands shook as she threw things into her case, her mind racing. The house, her family, the fire. This was her fault. She'd left them, abandoned them, and now, no, she'd made the right choice. She had. They'd created their own disasters for years. This wasn't. But what if someone was hurt? What if Amelia. The thoughts circled like vultures. 10 minutes later, they were in the carriage, racing toward London through twilight that bled into darkness. Eliza sat pressed against Cecilia's side, silent and watchful. Ravensmore stared out the window, his face carved from stone. It's not your fault, he said quietly. You don't know that. I know you can't control everything, can't save everyone. His eyes met hers. You made a choice for yourself. That's not abandonment. That's survival. Tell that to my mother if she's... Cecilia couldn't finish. The journey stretched endless. 6 hours in daylight became 7 in darkness, the carriage rattling over roads that seemed determined to delay them. Cecilia couldn't sleep, couldn't rest, could only replay every conversation, every choice, wondering if she'd sentenced her family to disaster by choosing herself. Eliza's hand found hers in the dark, small fingers, surprisingly strong. They'll be all right, the girl whispered. You can't know that. No, but you can't know they won't be. Eliza squeezed her hand. You told me crying is honest, so is hoping. The wisdom in it from a 9-year-old who'd learned young that hope was dangerous brought fresh tears to Cecilia's eyes. London appeared as dawn broke, gray and smoke-stained and familiar in ways that hurt. The carriage turned toward her family's street, and Cecilia's heart climbed into her throat. The Harrow townhouse stood, but barely. The roof was gone, windows shattered, the front facade blackened and broken. Neighbors stood in clusters, whispering. A fire wagon remained, though the flames were out. The carriage stopped. Cecilia was out before it fully halted, running toward the ruin of her childhood home. Wait! Ravensmore's voice behind her. She didn't wait. She pushed through the gathered crowd, searching for familiar faces. There. Her mother, wrapped in a blanket, her face gray with shock. Her father beside her, coughing. And Amelia, alive and whole but crying into her hands. No Thomas. Where's Thomas? Cecilia grabbed her mother's arm. Mother, where's Thomas? Eleanor Harrow looked at her daughter with eyes gone hollow. He didn't make it out, she whispered. The world stopped. The words didn't make sense. Cecilia heard them, recognized the shapes of consonants and vowels, but they refused to form meaning. What do you mean he didn't make it out? Her mother's face was a mask of shock, eyes unfocused. The fire started in his room. He was... The smell of smoke woke me, but by then... Where is he? Cecilia's voice rose. Mother, where is Thomas? Eleanor gestured vaguely toward a covered shape near the fire wagon. Someone had laid a blanket over it, tucked the edges down carefully. Too carefully. Cecilia's legs moved without her permission, carrying her across cobblestones still wet from the fire brigade's efforts. She reached for the blanket's edge. Miss, you don't want to... A fireman stepped forward. She pulled the blanket back anyway. Thomas lay there, face blackened by smoke, eyes closed. He looked smaller than she remembered, younger, 23 and gone, stopped, mid-breath, mid-life, mid-mistake. He's not dead. The words came out flat. He's just unconscious. We need a doctor. Miss Harrow. The fireman's voice was gentle. I'm sorry. He's been gone for hours. No. Cecilia knelt beside her brother's body. His hand was still warm. Or maybe that was wishful thinking, her mind refusing what her eyes could see. No, he was just at Ravensmore Hall yesterday. He rode away. He can't be... Cecilia. Ravensmore's hand on her shoulder, firm and grounding. Come away. He was fine. He was angry but fine. He just needed to... Her throat closed. This is my fault. No. I sent him back here. Told him to face consequences. And now he's... The grief hit like a physical blow, doubling her over. A sound escaped her throat. Animal. Broken. Barely human. Ravensmore pulled her up, away from her brother's body, away from the truth she couldn't process. She fought him briefly, then collapsed against his chest, shaking. I killed him, she whispered. I sent him home and he... The fire investigator wants to speak with you, a voice said. A man in official dress stood nearby, notebook in hand, face professionally neutral. When you're ready... She's not ready, Ravensmore said sharply. I need to know what happened. The investigator's voice was firm. There are questions about how the fire started. Cecilia pulled away from Ravensmore, wiping her face with the back of her hand. Tell me. The investigator consulted his notes. The fire began in Mr. Thomas Harrow's bedroom, approximately 3 o'clock this morning. The initial burn pattern suggests lamp oil, possibly an overturned lamp. However, he paused. There are inconsistencies. What kind of inconsistencies? The bedroom door was locked from the outside. The window was nailed shut. His eyes were sharp, assessing. Your brother couldn't have escaped even if he'd woken in time. Ice crystallized in Cecilia's veins. Someone locked him in? That's what the evidence suggests. Eleanor made a small sound. Denial or comprehension, impossible to tell. Gerald Harrow stepped forward, coughing still, his face gray. That's ridiculous. Who would... Mr. Harrow owed significant debts, the investigator continued, to Marcus Blackwood specifically. Blackwood's known for, shall we say, creative collection methods. You think Blackwood did this? Cecilia's voice came out hollow. I think your brother made dangerous enemies, and fires are a convenient way to send messages. The investigator closed his notebook. We'll be investigating further, but in the meantime, I need statements from all family members about Mr. Harrow's movements yesterday. He was at Ravensmore Hall, Cecilia said, with Blackwood. They came to... She stopped, remembering. The confrontation. The debt paid. Thomas riding away alive and whole and angry. To demand payment, Ravensmore finished, which I provided. £800 to settle the original debt. Blackwood was unhappy about losing the compounded interest. The investigator's eyebrows rose. You paid Thomas Harrow's debt? I paid the legitimate portion. Blackwood's terms were usurious, Hud. Ravensmore's voice was ice. He made threats when we refused the full amount. What kind of threats? He said Miss Harrow had made an enemy, that we'd made a mistake. Ravensmore's jaw tightened. I assumed he meant social retaliation, not murder. We don't know it's murder yet, the investigator cautioned. Could be an accident. Drunk young man, overturned lamp, poor luck with a stuck lock. The window was nailed shut, Cecilia said. Thomas wouldn't have done that. He hated sleeping in closed rooms. He always kept the window open, even in winter. Her mother looked up sharply. That's true. He did. The investigator made a note. Who had access to the house yesterday? Just family, Gerald said. And the servants, Cook, Mary the maid, old Henderson. Where are the servants now? Silence. Eleanor's face went white. I haven't seen them since before the fire. I assumed they'd fled when it started, but we'll need to locate them. The investigator's expression was grim. In cases like this, servants are often the first to disappear if there's been foul play. Cecilia's mind was racing through shock and grief. Thomas dead. Possibly murdered. Blackwood's threats. The servants gone. This is my fault, she said again. I challenged Blackwood. Told him to take the 800 or nothing. He threatened me and I... You did nothing wrong. Ravensmore's voice was firm. Blackwood is responsible for whatever happened here, not you. But if you'd what? Paid the full extortion? Given in to threats? Let him bleed your family dry. Ravensmore turned to the investigator. Marcus Blackwood has been operating outside the law for years. Everyone knows it. Why hasn't he been stopped? Knowing and proving are different things, Your Grace. Blackwood's careful, keeps his hands clean, uses intermediaries. The investigator tucked his notebook away. But if this is his work, he's made a mistake. Killing a gentleman's son is different from terrorizing debtors. The magistrate will take notice. Will that bring my son back? Eleanor's voice cracked on the last word. No, ma'am, but it might prevent the next one. The investigator left them standing in the wreckage of their home and their family. Neighbors still watched, whispering. Cecilia could feel their eyes, their judgment. The Harrow family, always on the edge of scandal, finally tumbling over into tragedy. Amelia appeared at Cecilia's side, her beautiful face swollen from crying. I told him where you were, when he demanded to know. If I hadn't, don't. Cecilia pulled her sister close. Don't take this on. Thomas made his own choices. We all did. But I thought, Amelia's voice broke. I thought he'd be fine. He was always fine, charming his way out of trouble, making people forgive him. I thought he was invincible. So did he. They stood together, two sisters who'd been strangers in their own home, united finally in grief. Your Grace, a voice interrupted. A woman Cecilia didn't recognize, well-dressed, middle-aged. I'm Mrs. Pemberton. I live 3 houses down. I wanted to offer... She paused. Your family shouldn't stay at a hotel. There will be talk. Please, use my guest rooms, at least until arrangements can be made. Eleanor looked up, surprise breaking through her shock. That's very kind, but I insist. No family should face this alone. Mrs. Pemberton's gaze swept over them. Mother, father, 2 daughters, all hollow-eyed and smoke-stained. Come, I'll have rooms prepared. They followed her like children, too exhausted to resist kindness. The Pemberton house was everything the Harrow residents had never quite managed to be. Elegant without strain, wealthy without announcement. Mrs. Pemberton settled them in a drawing room while servants scurried to prepare chambers. Only then did Cecilia remember Eliza. She found the girl still in the carriage, pressed against the window, watching everything. Her face was pale, eyes too old again. Is your brother really dead? Eliza asked. Yes. I'm sorry. The words were simple, unadorned. Death is horrible. Yes. Cecilia climbed into the carriage beside her. It is. Do you wish you'd stayed in London? Kept protecting him? The question was brutal in its directness. Cecilia considered lying, offering the expected answer, but Eliza deserved honesty. No, she said quietly. If I'd stayed, I'd still be cleaning up his mistakes, and he'd probably still be dead, just later, after I'd sacrificed more years to a pattern that was never going to change. Eliza nodded slowly. Father said something like that once, about my mother, that staying in their marriage was killing them both, but leaving killed her anyway. She looked at Cecilia. Sometimes all the choices are bad. You just pick the one you can live with. The wisdom in it, from a child who shouldn't have to think this way, made Cecilia's chest ache. Your father's waiting inside, she said. We should go in. Are we still getting married, you and him? Cecilia stopped. Was she? Everything had changed in the span of hours. Her brother dead, her family shattered, her escape from duty turned into a new kind of cage. I don't know, she admitted. Everything's complicated now. Everything's always complicated. Eliza climbed out of the carriage. That's not a reason to give up. Inside, Ravensmore was speaking quietly with Mrs. Pemberton. He looked up when Cecilia and Eliza entered, his expression unreadable. Your family is being settled in the guest wing, Mrs. Pemberton said. I've sent for a doctor to examine your parents. The smoke inhalation, you understand. And I've taken the liberty of contacting an undertaker for your brother. The practical arrangements of death. Someone had to handle them. Thank you, Cecilia managed. Mrs. Pemberton excused herself. Ravensmore moved closer, his voice dropping. I need to speak with the magistrate, see what can be done about Blackwood. He paused. Unless you want me to stay. No, go. Cecilia was surprised by her own certainty. If Blackwood did this, he needs to answer for it. Cecilia. Ravensmore's hand found hers briefly. What happened to Thomas isn't your fault. You know that, don't you? I know. I told him to face consequences. I know he's dead 12 hours later. Her voice was flat. Knowing and feeling are different things. He studied her face, then nodded. I'll be back before nightfall. Eliza, stay with Cecilia. Obviously, Eliza said. He left. The house settled into a heavy quiet, broken only by distant servants' footsteps and Eleanor's muffled crying from upstairs. Cecilia sat in Mrs. Pemberton's drawing room and tried to make sense of a world that had shifted violently overnight. Thomas was dead, possibly murdered. Her family was homeless, and she was free. The thought came unbidden and brought immediate guilt. Her brother was dead and she was thinking about freedom? But it was true. The weight she'd carried for 25 years was gone. Thomas would create no more debts, make no more disasters, require no more sacrifice. He was beyond her help now, beyond anyone's help. And she was here, alive, with choices still ahead of her. The guilt of that realization was crushing. "You're thinking too much," Eliza said from across the room. She'd curled up in a chair, watching Cecilia with those two knowing eyes. "How can you tell?" "Your face gets tight, like you're trying to solve an impossible problem." The girl paused. "My mother used to look like that. Before she died. Father said she was trapped between what everyone expected and what she actually wanted." "What did she want?" "To not be married, to not be pregnant, to not be dying." Eliza said it matter-of-factly, but pain lived underneath. "She chose honesty at the end, told Father the truth about everything. It hurt him, but at least it was real." "Is that why you value honesty so much?" "It's the only thing people can't take back. Lies fall apart. Promises break. But if someone tells you the truth, even if it hurts, at least you know where you stand." Eliza pulled her knees to her chest. "So tell me the truth. Are you going to leave us now? Go back to your family because they need you?" Cecilia looked at this fierce, damaged child who'd learned too young that love meant loss. "No," she said, "I'm not going back. Even though your brother died, especially because he died." The words felt cruel but necessary. "My family will grieve him. They'll manage the funeral, settle the estate, figure out what comes next, and they'll do it without me cleaning up the mess, because that's what needs to happen. What if they can't manage? Then they'll learn, or they won't. Either way, it's not my responsibility anymore." Cecilia stood, moved to the window. Outside, London carried on, carriages passing, servants running errands, life continuing despite death. "I spent 25 years being responsible for everyone else. It never helped. It just made them dependent and me exhausted." "So you're choosing yourself." "I'm choosing the life I want instead of the one I was assigned." She looked at Eliza. "Is that selfish?" "I don't know. Maybe." The girl considered. "But Father says sometimes you have to be selfish or you disappear. Become what everyone else needs instead of who you are." Footsteps on the stairs. Eleanor appeared, her face ravaged by grief and shock. She stopped when she saw Cecilia. "I need to speak with you," her mother said. "Alone." Eliza looked at Cecilia, then left without argument. The door closed. Eleanor sank onto a settee, suddenly looking every one of her 50 years. "Your father is useless, sitting upstairs staring at walls. Amelia won't stop crying, and Thomas is—" Her voice broke. "My son is dead, Cecilia, and I don't know what to do." For years, this moment had been Cecilia's cue, her mother's helplessness, her signal to step in, to manage, to fix. Instead, she said, "I'm sorry, Mother, but I can't help you." Eleanor's head snapped up. "What? I can't manage this for you. The funeral, the estate, the debts, whatever comes next. I can't do it." "You have to. You're the only one who—" "No." The word came out firm. "I'm the only one who always did. That's different." Her mother stared at her like she'd started speaking in tongues. "What's gotten into you? Your brother is dead, and you're— What? Abandoning us?" "I'm setting a boundary. Finally." Cecilia kept her voice steady despite the way her hands shook. "For 25 years, I've held this family together. Managed the accounts, covered Thomas's debts, made sure Amelia had what she needed while I went without. And you never noticed. Never asked what I wanted. Just assumed I'd keep sacrificing because that's what I did. That's what family does." "No. That's what I did because no one else would." The anger she'd been suppressing for years bubbled to the surface. "Thomas gambled away thousands, and you made excuses. Father invested in schemes that never paid, and you pretended everything was fine. Amelia got every advantage while I wore hand-me-downs, and through all of it, you never once asked if I was happy, if I wanted something different. You just took and assumed I'd keep giving. Eleanor's face had gone white. I never. You appreciated having someone to manage the consequences of your choices. That's not the same as seeing me. Cecilia's throat was tight. I'm marrying the Duke of Ravensmore. I'm leaving London. And whatever happens with Thomas's funeral, the estate, Blackwood, you'll handle it without me. You can't be serious. What will people say? Your brother not even buried, and you're running off to... I don't care what people say. The truth of it was liberating and terrifying. I'm done performing for an audience that doesn't matter. Her mother stood, shaking with fury or shock or both. If you do this, if you leave now, I'll never forgive you. The threat hung in the air. Years ago, it would have worked. The fear of her mother's disappointment, of being cast out, of losing the only family she had, it would have been enough to make Cecilia fold. Now, standing in the wreckage of a life she'd never chosen, she felt only sad clarity. Then don't forgive me, she said quietly. I'll learn to live with it. Eleanor's face crumpled. For a moment, Cecilia saw past the fury to the fear underneath, a woman who'd built her life on appearances and strategies, watching it all collapse. We need you, Eleanor whispered. You want me. There's the difference. Cecilia moved toward the door. Find a solicitor. Handle Thomas's debts. Sell the house if you have to, but do it yourselves. I'm done being the person who saves you from your own choices. Cecilia, she left before her mother could finish, before the guilt could claw her back into old patterns. In the hallway, she found Ravensmore returned, speaking quietly with Mrs. Pemberton. He looked up as she approached. The magistrate is opening an investigation into Blackwood, he said. 3 servants from your household have come forward. They were paid to disappear the night of the fire, by a man matching Blackwood's description. So it was murder. It's looking increasingly likely. His expression was grim. Blackwood miscalculated. He thought killing a disgraced gambler would send a message without consequences. But your brother was still a gentleman's son. The magistrate can't ignore this. Will Blackwood hang? Possibly, if the servants testify, if the evidence holds. Ravensmore paused. Are you all right? No. Cecilia's voice was steady despite the truth. But I will be. Your mother... I heard raised voices. I told her I'm leaving. She's angry. Cecilia looked at him directly. I need to know, does your offer still stand? After all this? You think your brother's death changes things? I think it complicates them. Marrying me now after this scandal, people will talk. Say you're taking advantage of my family's disaster. Let them talk. Ravensmore's voice was firm. I offered you partnership. That offer doesn't expire because circumstances changed. Even if I come with all this, she gestured vaguely. Death and debt and family drama? Everyone comes with history. Yours is just more visible than most. He moved closer. The question is whether you still want this, not whether I'll still have you. Cecilia considered. Her brother dead, possibly murdered because she'd stood up to Blackwood. Her mother furious. Her family shattered. And ahead of her, a life she'd choose herself, a child who needed her, a man who saw her clearly. I want this, she said. I want the life we talked about, even now, especially now. Something eased in Ravensmore's expression. Then we'll marry as planned, quickly, quietly, before your family can create more complications. They'll say I'm heartless, marrying days after my brother's funeral. They'll say that regardless of when we marry. Might as well do it on our terms. Mrs. Pemberton cleared her throat delicately. If I may, there's a small chapel on my estate in Kent. Very private, very discreet. If you wanted to avoid London scrutiny. Ravensmore looked at Cecilia. What do you think? I think yes. The decision felt reckless and right. Let's do it before I lose my nerve. You won't lose your nerve. This from Eliza, who'd appeared on the stairs, eavesdropping shamelessly. You're braver than you think. Or more desperate, Cecilia said. Same thing, sometimes. The girl came down the stairs. Can I be at the wedding? Obviously, Cecilia said, echoing Eliza's earlier certainty. Mrs. Pemberton smiled. I'll make arrangements. 3 days hence? That gives time for a proper license and for... She paused delicately. For your family to make funeral arrangements. 3 days. Cecilia would bury her brother and marry a duke in the same week. The scandal would be magnificent. 3 days, she agreed. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of grim arrangements. Thomas's funeral was small, quiet, attended mostly by creditors hoping to learn if debts would be paid. Eleanor wore black and accepted condolences with brittle dignity. Gerald stood hollow-eyed and silent. Amelia cried genuinely, mourning the brother she'd loved despite his flaws. Cecilia stood apart from them, feeling the distance that had always existed now made visible. She grieved Thomas, the boy he'd been, the man he might have become if he'd learned to face consequences sooner. But she couldn't regret the choice that had led here. At the burial, Blackwood appeared, bold as brass, standing at the edge of the cemetery, watching with cold satisfaction. Ravensmore saw him too. His hand found Cecilia's. "Don't," he said quietly. "Not here." "He killed my brother. The magistrate will handle it. We have witnesses, evidence. Blackwood will answer for this." His grip tightened. "But not today. Today you bury Thomas with dignity." She wanted to scream at Blackwood, to tear into him with accusations and rage. Instead, she stood silent and let her brother be lowered into the ground. After, as mourners dispersed, Blackwood approached. He stopped a careful distance away, his expression mocking. "My condolences, Miss Harrow. Tragic accident." "It wasn't an accident," Cecilia said, "and you know it." "Do I?" "I know a young man with debts he couldn't pay met an unfortunate end. Happens more often than you'd think." His smile was vicious. "I warned you. Said you'd made an enemy. Should have listened." "I did listen, and I made my choice." She stepped closer, surprised by her own steadiness. "You thought killing Thomas would terrify me into submission. Instead, you've given the magistrate everything he needs to hang you." Blackwood's smile faltered. "You can't prove—" "3 servants, all willing to testify about the man who paid them to disappear. The locked door, the nailed window." Cecilia's voice was quiet but clear. "You made a mistake, Mr. Blackwood. You murdered a gentleman's son thinking no one would care, but they do care, and you're going to pay for it." Bold words from a woman who will be ruined by scandal within the week. "I'm marrying a duke in 2 days. What scandal can touch me?" She met his eyes. "You've lost, Mr. Blackwood. You just don't know it yet." Ravensmore appeared at her side, his presence a wall of authority. "Leave, now, before I have you arrested on the spot." Blackwood's face darkened, but he backed away. "This isn't over." "Yes," Ravensmore said coldly. "It is." They watched him leave, a predator who'd miscalculated, who'd thought himself untouchable, and was just beginning to realize otherwise. "That was brave," Ravensmore said. "That was terrifying." Cecilia's hands were shaking. "But necessary." "Yes, it was." That night, Eleanor confronted Cecilia one final time. She came to the guest room where Cecilia was packing, her face hard with anger barely controlled. "You're really going through with this farce of a wedding while your brother's body is barely cold?" "Yes." "What kind of daughter? What kind of sister? The kind who's done sacrificing herself for a family that never valued the sacrifice." Cecilia folded a dress carefully. "You taught me that, Mother. You taught me that women are currency to be spent wisely. I'm just spending myself on my own terms instead of yours. This isn't wisdom, it's selfishness. Then I'm selfish. I can live with that." She looked at her mother. "Can you live with what you've become? A woman so focused on appearances that she drove her son to desperate measures? Who valued social position over her children's happiness?" Eleanor's hand flew up. Whether to strike or gesture, Cecilia never knew. She caught her mother's wrist. "Don't," she said quietly. "We're past that." "You've changed." Eleanor's voice shook. "I don't even recognize you." "Good. The girl you knew was killing herself slowly to keep you comfortable." Cecilia released her mother's wrist. "I'm done dying for this family." Eleanor left without another word. The morning of the wedding dawned gray and cold. They traveled to Kent in Ravensmore's carriage. Cecilia, the Duke, Eliza, and Mrs. Pemberton, who'd appointed herself unofficial guardian of propriety. The chapel was small, old, beautiful in its simplicity. No grand ceremony, no society watching, just a vicar, a handful of witnesses, and 2 people making a choice. Cecilia wore a simple dress, cream silk, no ornamentation. She looked at herself in a mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. No longer the girl in shadows. Something else. Something chosen. "You look beautiful," Eliza said from the doorway. She wore blue, her dark hair braided with ribbons. "I look terrified." "Same thing." The girl moved closer. "Are you sure about this?" "No." "Are you?" "No." Eliza smiled slightly. "But Father says the best decisions are the ones that scare you." "Your father is probably right." They walked to the chapel together. Inside, Ravensmore waited at the altar, severe in dark clothing, his face unreadable. The ceremony was brief, vows spoken quietly, rings exchanged. The vicar's pronouncement, "You are now husband and wife," making official what had already been decided. Cecilia felt the weight of the ring on her finger, unfamiliar and strange. She was married, a duchess. No longer Cecilia Harrow, but Cecilia Ashford, Duchess of Ravensmore. Outside, rain had started, light, persistent, turning the chapel grounds silver. "Are you all right?" Ravensmore asked quietly. "I don't know yet." Cecilia looked at him. This man who was now her husband, her partner, her choice. "Ask me tomorrow." "Fair enough." Eliza took both their hands. "Can we go home now? Ravensmore Hall, I mean. Real home." "Yes," Cecilia said, surprising herself with certainty. "Let's go home." As the carriage pulled away from the chapel, Cecilia looked back one last time at London, at the life she'd left behind, the family she'd chosen to outgrow, the girl she'd been. "No regrets?" Ravensmore asked. She thought about Thomas, dead because she'd drawn a line, about her mother's fury, about 25 years of sacrifice that had helped no one. "Plenty of regrets," she said honestly, "but not this one." Eliza leaned against her shoulder. Ravensmore's hand found hers, and Cecilia felt something she'd never expected, the beginning of peace. The journey north took 2 days. When Ravensmore Hall appeared on the horizon, Cecilia felt her chest ease. Not home yet, too soon for that, but the promise of home, the possibility. Inside, the staff lined up to greet their new duchess. Mrs. Thornberry, the housekeeper, curtsied with surprising warmth. "Welcome home, Your Grace." "Your Grace." The title felt strange, too large for her shoulders, but Cecilia straightened, accepting it. "Thank you. I'm glad to be here." That evening, after dinner, after Eliza had been sent to bed protesting, Cecilia found herself alone with Ravensmore in the library. "Your family will come around," he said. "Eventually." "I'm not sure they will, or that I want them to." She looked at him. "Is that terrible?" "It's honest." He poured brandy, handed her a glass. "My parents never approved of Catherine. Thought she was too strong-willed, too independent. After she died, they wanted me to mourn properly, meaning quietly, without questioning anything." He paused. "I cut ties with them instead. Haven't spoken to them in 7 years." "Do you regret it?" "No. They wanted me to pretend the marriage was perfect, that Catherine's death was a tragedy, rather than an escape for her. I couldn't do it." He met her eyes. "Sometimes the people who share your blood are the ones who understand you least." "And sometimes," Cecilia said quietly, "the family you choose is more real than the one you're born into." They sat in comfortable silence. This marriage that wasn't about love, but about something perhaps more durable, mutual respect, shared understanding, the courage to choose honestly. "I received word from London today," Ravensmore said finally. "The magistrate arrested Blackwood. The servant's testimony was damning. He'll stand trial within the month." Cecilia felt something loosen in her chest. "Good. Your mother sent a letter as well. I haven't opened it." He handed her an envelope, Eleanor's precise handwriting on the front. Cecilia held it for a moment, then set it aside unopened. "Later. Or never. I haven't decided yet." "That's fair." Upstairs in the Duchess's bedroom that was now hers, Cecilia stood at the window looking out over grounds that stretched into darkness. Somewhere out there, Eliza slept. Somewhere behind her, Ravensmore worked in his study. And somewhere inside her, a life she'd chosen was beginning to take root. She thought of Thomas, wondered if he'd understand the choice she'd made. Probably not. He'd always believed family was everything, that blood ties mattered more than anything else. But Cecilia had learned different. Blood was just the beginning. What you built from there, that was the story that mattered. And her story, for the first time in 25 years, was hers to write. 3 weeks passed before the letter came. Cecilia had fallen into a rhythm at Ravensmore Hall. Not comfortable yet, but familiar. Mornings with Eliza, afternoons managing the household accounts that Mrs. Thornberry gratefully surrendered, evenings with Ravensmore discussing estate business or sitting in companionable silence. It wasn't the life she'd imagined as a girl, but it was hers. The envelope arrived at breakfast, cream-colored paper with official seals. Ravensmore opened it while Cecilia watched Eliza push eggs around her plate. "Eat properly," Cecilia said, "not just the bacon. Bacon is the only good part. Eggs are good for you. So is riding, and I do that every day." But Eliza took a bite anyway, making a face. "The trial is set," Ravensmore said quietly. 2 weeks from today. They want you to testify." Cecilia's fork stilled. "Me? You were there when Thomas confronted Blackwood. You heard the threats. The magistrate thinks your testimony, combined with the servants, will be enough to convict." He looked at her. "You don't have to do it." "What happens if I don't?" "Blackwood might walk. The servants' testimony alone is weak. They're working class, easy to discredit. But a duchess accusing him of murder?" Ravensmore's expression was grim. "That carries weight." Eliza had stopped eating, watching them both. "Are you scared?" "Yes," Cecilia said honestly. "Good. Being scared means it matters." The girl stood, carrying her plate to the sideboard. "I'm going to ride Tempest. Come find me when you're done being terrified." She left. Ravensmore almost smiled. "She's right, you know. Fear means it matters. It also means I might fail." Cecilia pushed her own plate away. "What if I testify and he still walks? What if my testimony isn't enough?" "Then at least you tried. At least you stood up and named what he did." He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "You don't have to be perfect, Cecilia. You just have to be honest." The words echoed what she'd told Eliza weeks ago. Honesty over performance. Truth over appearance. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll testify." The next 2 weeks crawled past. Cecilia prepared with Ravensmore's solicitor, a sharp-eyed man named Pembroke, who asked brutal questions to prepare her for cross-examination. "They'll attack your character," Pembroke warned. "Say you're a social climber who married above her station, that you're testifying out of spite, not truth." "Let them," Cecilia said. "I know what happened. So does Blackwood." "Knowing and proving are different things in court." "Then I'll prove it." The journey to London was tense. Eliza insisted on coming despite Ravensmore's objections. "She's testifying for my brother too," the girl argued. "Thomas was her family. I should be there." "You're 9 years old, and I've seen enough death to understand what justice means." Eliza's jaw set stubbornly. "I'm coming." They arrived in London the night before the trial. The city felt different now, no longer home, just a place Cecilia used to live. They stayed at Ravensmore's townhouse in Mayfair, and Cecilia barely slept. At dawn, she dressed in black, widow's weeds, technically wrong since Thomas was her brother, but the symbolism was deliberate. Someone had died. Someone needed to answer for it. The courthouse was gray stone in judgment, packed with spectators drawn by scandal. A duke's new wife accusing a notorious moneylender of murder. It was the kind of drama London society craved. Cecilia saw her family in the gallery. Eleanor, Gerald, and Amelia, all in black, all looking hollowed out by grief and shock. Her mother's eyes met hers briefly, then looked away. The rejection stung less than Cecilia expected. The trial began with formalities, charges read, jury sworn, Blackwood sitting in the dock looking confident and dangerous. His solicitor was expensive, sharp-tongued, the kind of man who won cases by destroying witnesses. The prosecution called the servants first. Cook testified about the man who'd come to the kitchen door, offering money for them to leave the house that night. Mary the maid described the same man, his description matching Blackwood. Old Henderson spoke about finding the bedroom door locked from outside, the window nailed shut. Blackwood's solicitor tore into them methodically. Wasn't it dark? Could they really be certain of the man's identity? Wasn't it convenient they remembered these details only after being offered immunity? By the time they finished, the servants' testimony was shredded, their certainty questioned, their motives suspect. Then the prosecution called Cecilia. She walked to the witness box feeling every eye in the courtroom. Her hands shook as she swore the oath, but her voice stayed steady. The prosecutor was gentle at first, establishing her relationship to Thomas, her presence at Ravensmoor Hall when he and Blackwood arrived. "And what did Mr. Blackwood say when your husband offered to pay the original debt?" "He was angry, said we'd made a mistake, that I'd made an enemy." Cecilia looked directly at Blackwood as she spoke. "He implied there would be consequences for refusing his terms. Did you take this as a threat?" "Yes, absolutely." "And when you learned of your brother's death?" "I knew immediately it wasn't an accident. Thomas was reckless, but not suicidal. He wouldn't have locked himself in, nailed the window shut." Her voice strengthened. "Someone wanted him to die. Someone who'd threatened consequences just hours before." The prosecutor nodded. "Your witness." Blackwood's solicitor stood, a tall man with ice in his voice and cruelty in his smile. "Your Grace." The title dripped mockery. "You married the Duke of Ravensmoor rather quickly after your brother's death, did you not?" "I did." "Some might say suspiciously quickly, almost as if you'd been planning it before your brother's unfortunate demise." "I had been planning it. The Duke proposed before Thomas died. How convenient. A poor baron's daughter snaring a wealthy duke, then her inconvenient brother dies, leaving her free to pursue her social ambitions without family complications." Pembroke shot to his feet. "Objection. Counsel is testifying rather than questioning." "Sustained," the judge said. "Mr. Blackwood's counsel will confine himself to questions." The solicitor smiled thinly. "Did you love your brother, Your Grace?" The question was a trap. Answer yes, and she was lying. Her actions proved otherwise. Answer no, and she was a heartless monster. "I loved the boy he was," Cecilia said quietly. "I grieved the man he could have become. But I stopped enabling his self-destruction. Yes, that's not the same as wanting him dead. Yet you benefited from his death. No more debts to pay, no more family obligations. Free to marry your duke and play at being nobility. I benefited from setting boundaries. Thomas's death was tragedy, not convenience. You testified that Mr. Blackwood threatened consequences. What exact words did he use?" Cecilia thought back to that confrontation. "He said, 'You've made an enemy today, Miss Harrow.' That's it? No specific threat of violence? No mention of your brother?" The meaning was clear. Was it? Or are you interpreting an ordinary business warning as a death threat to support your narrative? The solicitor moved closer. "Isn't it true that you hate Mr. Blackwood? That you resented him for your brother's debts?" "I didn't hate him. I refused to be extorted by him. And when your brother died, you saw an opportunity. Accuse the man who embarrassed you. Destroy his reputation. Elevate your own status as the brave Duchess seeking justice. That's not... You're not really seeking justice for Thomas, are you? You're seeking revenge for yourself." "No." Cecilia's voice cut through the courtroom. "I'm seeking accountability. For Thomas, yes, but also for every desperate person Blackwood has preyed on. Every family he's destroyed with impossible interest rates and threats. Every son and daughter who died because they couldn't escape his traps." The solicitor's eyes narrowed. "You're very passionate about this, almost as if you've been planning this accusation for some time." "I've been watching men like Blackwood destroy people for years. My brother was just the latest victim. The difference now is I have the power to do something about it." "The power of a duchess, you mean? The social position you gained by marrying above your station. The position I gained by choosing honestly for once in my life." Cecilia leaned forward. "You can attack my character, my marriage, my motives. But you can't change what happened. Thomas died in a locked room with a nailed window, hours after Blackwood threatened consequences. The servants were paid to disappear. The evidence is clear." "Evidence circumstantial at best. Is it circumstantial that Blackwood has a history of violence against debtors? That 3 other families have come forward with similar stories of threats and mysterious accidents?" This from the prosecutor, standing. "Your Grace, can you speak to what you observed of Mr. Blackwood's character during your interaction?" "He was cold, calculating. He spoke about my sister as potential collateral, as if she were property to be seized. He looked at my family's suffering as a business opportunity." Cecilia's gaze never left Blackwood's face. "And when we refused his terms, he smiled, like he'd already planned what would happen next." The courtroom was silent. Even Blackwood's solicitor seemed to sense the shift, the moment when testimony became truth too solid to shake. "No further questions," he said finally. Cecilia stepped down from the witness box on trembling legs. Ravensmore was there immediately, his hand steadying her. "You did well," he murmured. "I couldn't tell if I helped or hurt. You told the truth. That's all you can do." The trial continued for 2 more days. The prosecution presented financial records showing Blackwood's pattern of usurious lending. 2 other families testified about similar threats and suspicious accidents. The defense tried to discredit them all, but the pattern was too clear, too consistent. On the 3rd day, the jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous: guilty. The courtroom erupted. Blackwood's face went white with fury. His solicitor immediately began calling for appeal, but the judge's gavel silenced them all. "Marcus Blackwood, you have been found guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit murder. This court sentences you to death by hanging, sentence to be carried out within the month." Cecilia felt the words settle into her bones. Justice. Imperfect, delayed, but real. As they filed out of the courtroom, Eleanor intercepted them in the hall. "Cecilia." Her mother looked older, diminished. "May I speak with you?" Ravensmore looked at Cecilia, a silent question. She nodded. "I'll wait outside," he said. Eliza followed him reluctantly. Mother and daughter stood in the courthouse corridor, years of complicated history between them. "You were brave today," Eleanor said finally. "On the stand. I didn't know you had that in you. You never looked long enough to see." The words came without anger, just fact. Eleanor flinched. "That's fair. She stopped, started again. "I came to tell you I'm leaving London. Your father and I. Amelia, too. The house is sold to pay Thomas's remaining debts. We're moving to your aunt's estate in Cornwall." "Cornwall?" Cecilia couldn't hide her surprise. "Far from here. Far from the scandal and the whispers and the memories." Her mother's hands twisted together. "Your father needs the quiet. And Amelia, she deserves a chance to start over without London society judging her brother's mistakes." "That's wise. It's survival." Eleanor looked at her daughter properly for the first time in years. "You were right, Cecilia, about all of it. I did take you for granted, expected you to sacrifice without question because it was easier than facing our failures." Her voice cracked. "Thomas died because I raised him to believe someone would always catch him. You left because I taught you your worth was in what you could give, not who you were." "Mother—" "Let me finish." Eleanor's eyes were bright. "I can't undo 25 years of mistakes. Can't bring Thomas back or give you the childhood you deserved. But I can acknowledge the truth. You were the strongest of all of us, and I punished you for it by making you hold everything together." Cecilia felt tears threatening. "I needed to hear that, years ago. I needed you to see me. I know. And I'm sorry I didn't." Eleanor reached out tentatively, touching Cecilia's hand. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to try. But I wanted you to know, I see you now. I see what you've become. And I'm proud of you." The words landed like a blow and a gift. Cecilia had wanted this for so long she'd stopped believing it could happen. "Thank you," she managed. "Will you—" Eleanor hesitated. "Will you write? Occasionally? Let me know you're well. Maybe. Eventually." Cecilia squeezed her mother's hand. "I need time. To build my own life without the weight of the old one." "I understand." Eleanor pulled back, composing herself. "Take care of yourself, Cecilia, and that little girl, Eliza. She's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her." They parted without embrace, without dramatic reconciliation. Just 2 women acknowledging hard truths and choosing, finally, to be honest about them. Outside, Ravensmore and Eliza waited. The girl took Cecilia's hand immediately. "Did she apologize?" "Yes." "Did you forgive her?" "Not yet. Maybe someday." Cecilia looked down at this fierce child who'd learned to value honesty above comfort. "Is that wrong?" "No. Father says forgiveness has to be earned, not demanded." Eliza glanced at Ravensmore. "He's forgiven some people and not others. It depends on whether they actually changed or just wanted him to stop being angry. Your father is wise." "I know." The girl smiled slightly. "Can we go home now? London smells bad and everyone here is awful." "Not everyone," Cecilia said. But she understood the sentiment. The journey back to Ravensmoor Hall felt different this time, lighter, something resolved, if not perfectly healed. That evening, after Eliza had been sent to bed with only moderate protest, Cecilia found Ravensmoor in the library. He looked up from his book as she entered. "How are you feeling?" "Strange, relieved, sad, grateful." Cecilia sat across from him. "All of it at once." "That sounds right for today." They sat in silence for a while. Then Cecilia asked, "Do you think I did the right thing, testifying, choosing this life?" "Do you?" "I think I did the only thing I could do and still be able to look at myself in the mirror." She paused. "But it cost Thomas his life. If I just paid Blackwood's full demand, then Blackwood would have bled your family dry and moved on to the next victim. Thomas made his own choices, Cecilia. Bad ones. You're not responsible for the consequences." Ravensmoor set his book aside. "And if you'd chosen differently, stayed in London, kept sacrificing yourself, you'd be the one who died. Maybe not literally, but in every way that matters." "Is that what happened to Catherine? She died from being trapped?" "Yes. Not in childbirth, though that's what killed her body, but years before that when she agreed to marry me knowing she didn't want to. When she tried to be what everyone expected instead of who she was." His voice was rough with old grief. "I watched her die slowly, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but anger and resentment. And I couldn't save her because she'd already made the choice that killed her, the choice to sacrifice herself for duty." "Did you love her?" "I respected her, cared for her." "But love?" Ravensmoor shook his head. "We never had the chance. We were too busy performing our roles." "Is that what we're doing? Performing?" "No." He looked at her directly. "We're building something real. It's not romance or passion, but it's honest, and that's worth more than any performance." Cecilia felt the truth of it settle. This marriage, this life, this strange family they were creating, it wasn't what she'd imagined as a girl dreaming of love stories. It was better, it was real. "Eliza asked me today if I was her mother now," she said quietly. "What did you tell her?" "That I'm someone who cares about her, someone who's staying, that what we call it matters less than what we build." Cecilia paused. She accepted that, but I think she wants permission to call me mother, eventually, when she's ready. "And will you give it?" "Yes. If she asks. If she means it." Cecilia's throat tightened. "I never thought I'd have children. Thought I was too old, too plain, too useful to be spared for motherhood. But Eliza, she's choosing me as much as I'm choosing her." "That's what makes it real," Ravensmoor said. "Choice, not obligation." The weeks that followed brought a new rhythm. Cecilia settled into running Ravensmoor Hall with efficiency that surprised even Mrs. Thornberry. The accounts balanced properly for the first time in years. The staff responded to her quiet authority with something approaching affection. Eliza remained difficult, testing boundaries and pushing limits. But the tests grew less frequent, the anger less sharp. She started joining Cecilia for morning tea, started asking questions about household management, started, hesitantly, seeking approval instead of confrontation. One morning, 6 weeks after the trial, Cecilia found Eliza in the stables earlier than usual. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Bad dreams." The girl was brushing Tempest with fierce concentration. "About my mother. About her dying angry." Cecilia moved closer, picking up a second brush. "Want to talk about it?" "She said she hated me, in the dream. Said I killed her by being born." Eliza's hands stilled. "I know it's not true. Father explained it wasn't my fault, but sometimes it feels true anyway. Feelings don't have to be logical to hurt." "Do you ever dream about Thomas?" "Yes." Cecilia worked the brush through Tempest's mane. "I dream he's still alive, that I can save him if I just try harder, sacrifice more. Then I wake up and remember he's gone, and remember that trying harder wouldn't have changed anything." "Does it hurt?" "Yes, but less than it used to." She looked at the girl. "Grief gets smaller over time. Not gone, but manageable." "I don't want it to get smaller." Eliza's voice cracked. "If I stop hurting about my mother, it means I've forgotten her." "No, it means you've learned to carry the memory without it crushing you." Cecilia set down her brush, turning Eliza to face her. "You can remember your mother and still be happy. Can miss her and still move forward. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Father doesn't seem to miss her." "Your father carries guilt. which is different from missing. He wishes things had been different. That's its own kind of grief. Eliza considered this. Then quietly, "Do you think, if my mother had lived, she would have learned to love me?" The question broke Cecilia's heart. "I don't know, maybe. Or maybe she would have stayed angry. Some people can't get past their own pain long enough to see the good things right in front of them." "Like your mother?" "Yes, exactly like my mother." Cecilia touched the girl's shoulder. "But you know what? You don't need your mother's love to know you're worthy of love. You have your father. You have me. You have a whole life ahead of you with people who will choose to love you. Do you love me?" The question was vulnerable, naked with need. Cecilia could have deflected, could have said it was too soon, too complicated. Instead, she chose honesty. "Yes, I do." Eliza's face crumpled. She threw herself at Cecilia, arms wrapping tight, body shaking with sobs held back too long. Cecilia held her, this fierce, damaged child who'd been waiting years for someone to stay long enough to mean it. "I love you too," Eliza whispered into Cecilia's shoulder. "Is that okay?" "That's more than okay. That's everything." They stood in the stable, holding each other, while Tempest watched with patient equine wisdom and morning light turned the world golden. That evening, at dinner, Eliza was quieter than usual, thoughtful. Halfway through the meal, she looked at Cecilia and said clearly, deliberately, "Mother, can you pass the salt?" The word hung in the air. Ravensmore's fork stopped midway to his mouth. Cecilia felt tears prick her eyes. "Of course," she said, passing the salt shaker with hands that trembled slightly. Eliza took it, a small smile playing at her lips. She didn't say the word again that night, but the barrier had broken. Permission given and accepted. Later, after Eliza had gone to bed, Ravensmore found Cecilia in the library. "She called you mother." "I know. How do you feel about that?" Cecilia considered. Terrified, honored, completely unprepared. She looked at him. "Everything I've felt since coming here, basically." He smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "You're good at this. Being a mother, being a duchess, being yourself. I'm making it up as I go." "Aren't we all?" He moved closer. "But you're doing it honestly. That's what matters." 3 months after the wedding, a letter arrived from Cornwall, Amelia's handwriting, not Eleanor's. "Dear Cecilia, Mother said I should wait longer to write, that you need space, but I wanted you to know we're well. Cornwall is quiet and strange, and Father actually smiles sometimes. Mother is learning to manage the household herself, badly, but she's trying. I've met someone, a vicar's son. Not wealthy or titled, but kind. He doesn't care about my brother's scandal or our fallen status. He just likes talking to me about books and walking by the sea. I don't know if it will come to anything, but for the first time, I'm not performing. I'm just being myself. Turns out I quite like who that is when I'm not trying to be what everyone expects. I think I understand now why you left, why you chose yourself. I used to think it was selfish. Now I think it was the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do. Write when you're ready, or don't. Either way, know that I'm proud to be your sister. Love, Amelia." Cecilia read the letter 3 times, then showed it to Ravensmore. "Your sister sounds like she's finding her way," he said. "She sounds like she's becoming real." Cecilia folded the letter carefully. "I'll write back, not yet, but soon." Good. The year turned. Autumn came to Ravensmore Hall, painting the grounds in gold and crimson. Cecilia stood at her bedroom window one morning, watching Eliza ride Tempest across the meadow, and felt something she'd never expected. Contentment. Not happiness. Too simple a word for what she felt. But something deeper. The satisfaction of having chosen well, of having built something real from honest foundations. "What are you thinking?" Ravensmore asked from the doorway. "That I'm grateful." Cecilia turned to face him. "For this. For you. For Eliza. For the chance to be something other than what I was assigned to be. No regrets?" "Oh, plenty. Thomas still haunts me. My mother's wasted years, all the time I spent being invisible." She moved closer to him. "But I don't regret this. Us. This family we're building. Neither do I." He touched her face gently, the first truly affectionate gesture in months of careful partnership. You've changed things here. Changed Eliza. Changed me. How have I changed you? You've reminded me that honesty is worth the discomfort, that choosing people who choose you back is more valuable than any duty or obligation. He paused. You've made me hope again. That's not a small thing. Before Cecilia could respond, Eliza's voice rang from downstairs. Mother, father, come see. Tempest jumped the stone wall. They looked at each other and smiled. She's going to break her neck one day, Ravensmore said, without heat. Probably, but she'll do it honestly. Cecilia took his hand. Come on, let's go see. They went downstairs together toward their daughter's voice, toward the life they were building from choice instead of duty. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple, but it was real. And real, Cecilia had learned, was worth everything. Outside, Eliza demonstrated her jump again, fearless and grinning. Ravensmore winced. Cecilia laughed. The girl circled back, pulling Tempest to a stop in front of them. Did you see? I cleared it completely. I saw you risk your life for no reason, Ravensmore said dryly. It wasn't no reason. It was to see if I could. Eliza looked at Cecilia. Sometimes you have to jump the wall to know you're brave enough. Sometimes, Cecilia agreed, but maybe warn us before the next jump. Where's the fun in that? She rode off again, leaving her parents shaking their heads. She's impossible, Ravensmore said. She's perfect. Cecilia leaned against him, surprising them both. He didn't pull away. Instead, his arm came around her shoulders, holding her steady. They stood together watching their daughter ride. Two broken people who'd found each other not through romance but through brutal honesty. Two survivors who'd learned that family wasn't about blood or duty, but about choosing to stay when staying was hard. That evening, after Eliza was finally coaxed to bed, Cecilia returned to her room and found Eleanor's unopened letter from months ago. She broke the seal, read her mother's careful, stilted apology. It was inadequate and heartfelt in equal measure. She wrote back simply, Mother, I accept your apology. I may even forgive you someday, but first I need to finish building the life I chose. Give my love to Father and Amelia. See, she sealed it, set it aside for posting, and felt a chapter close. Months became a year became 2. Blackwood was hanged, his empire of predatory lending dismantled. Other families came forward telling stories similar to Thomas's. The magistrate launched investigations. Laws changed slowly, protecting debtors from the worst abuses. Thomas's death became something more than tragedy. It became catalyst. Cecilia testified before Parliament about usurious lending practices. Her status as Duchess gave weight to words that would have been dismissed from a baron's daughter. She thought Thomas would have laughed at the irony. His death accomplished more reform than his life ever had. Eliza grew. 13, then 14. The anger faded to occasional storms instead of constant weather. She still tested boundaries, but learned to trust that Cecilia and Ravensmore wouldn't leave when tested. One evening, curled up in the library, Eliza asked, Do you think you'll have other children? Real ones? Cecilia looked up from her book. You are real. You know what I mean? Ones you give birth to. Ones that are actually yours. You're actually mine. Biology is just one way to make family. Cecilia set her book aside. Why do you ask? I heard the servants talking, saying it's strange you haven't produced an heir yet, that maybe Father married the wrong woman after all. Do you think he married the wrong woman? No, but I wondered if you wanted... Eliza struggled. If you wanted the kind of children everyone expects duchesses to have. I want the child I have. You. Cecilia moved to sit beside her. If more children come, we'll welcome them. If they don't, I'm content with you. Either way, you're my daughter. That doesn't change. Promise? Promise. Eliza leaned against her, 14 years old and still needing reassurance. Cecilia held her, this girl she'd chosen, and who'd chosen her back, and felt complete. 5 years after the wedding, Cecilia stood in Ravensmore Hall's great room, surrounded by everything she'd built. The estate ran smoothly under her management. The accounts balanced. The staff was loyal. Eliza was thriving, sharp and fierce, and learning to channel her anger into purpose. And Ravensmore himself had become something more than a partner. Not quite love. They were both too damaged for fairy tales. But deep respect. trust. The intimacy of two people who'd seen each other's worst and stayed anyway. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Thornbury entered, looking pleased. Your Grace, there's a young woman here to see you. Says she's your sister. Amelia appeared behind the housekeeper, older and different. The desperate prettiness had matured into something more solid. She wore simple clothes, traveled dusty, and her smile was genuine. Cecilia, I hope I'm not intruding, but I wanted... She stopped, looking around. I wanted to see where you've been all this time. See what you've built. Cecilia crossed the room, embracing her sister properly for the first time in years. You're not intruding. You're welcome. They spent 3 days together. Amelia met Eliza, who was suspicious at first, then cautiously accepting. She walked the grounds with Ravensmore, who was cordial if distant, and she sat with Cecilia by the fire, talking honestly in ways they'd never managed before. Mother's different, Amelia said. Quieter. She actually listens now instead of just planning her next move. People can change, sometimes. She asks about you, wonders if you're happy. Amelia looked at her sister. Are you? Cecilia thought about the question. Yes. Not in the way I imagined happiness would look, but in a deeper way, a real way. I'm engaged, Amelia said suddenly, to the vicar's son I wrote about, James. He's kind and poor and has no prospects beyond a small living in Cornwall. Mother nearly had an attack when I told her. What did you say? I said I'd rather be poor and chosen than wealthy and invisible. Amelia's smile was wry. I think I learned that from you. Will you be happy with him? I already am. He sees me, Cecilia, really sees me. Not my face or my family name, just me. She paused. That's worth more than any title. Yes, Cecilia said softly. It is. When Amelia left, she hugged Cecilia tight. Thank you. For what? For showing me it's possible. To choose yourself and survive it. Amelia pulled back. I used to think you were selfish. Now I think you were the only sane one in our whole family. After she was gone, Cecilia found Ravensmore in the library. Your sister seems well, he said. She's found her way. Her own way. Cecilia sat beside him. It's strange. For years I thought leaving my family meant abandoning them. But maybe it gave them permission to change, to be honest about who they were without me holding everything together. Or maybe they just grew up. Ravensmore's voice was dry. Happens sometimes when people have to face consequences. Either way, Cecilia leaned against him, a habit now, comfortable and right. I'm glad I made the choice I made, even knowing what it cost. So am I. They sat together in companionable silence, two people who'd found each other in wreckage and built something solid from broken pieces. Years passed. Eliza grew into a formidable young woman, sharp, honest, kind in the fierce way of people who'd survived being unkind to themselves. She never completely stopped testing boundaries, but she learned to channel her anger into purpose. She rode like a demon, read voraciously, argued with her father about estate management, and loved her mother with the intensity of someone who'd waited too long for permission. Cecilia watched her daughter become herself and felt the deepest satisfaction of her life. This, raising a child to be honest instead of perfect, fierce instead of pleasant, this was the work that mattered. On Eliza's 18th birthday, they stood together overlooking the estate grounds. I've been thinking about what comes next, Eliza said, after this, after childhood. And what have you decided? I want to help people. The way you helped me. Eliza glanced at Cecilia. Father's been talking about establishing a foundation to help families trapped by predatory lending. I want to run it. Cecilia felt pride swell. That's good work. Will you help me? You know more about those families than anyone. You lived it. I'd be honored. They stood side by side, mother and daughter, not by blood but by choice, and looked out at the future they'd build together. Years later still, when Cecilia was 50 and her hair had gone silver at the temples, she stood in the same spot overlooking the grounds. Ravensmore found her there, his own hair fully gray now, his face lined but content. What are you thinking? He asked. That I made the right choice, all those years ago, choosing myself, choosing this. She looked at him. Choosing you. No regrets? Oh, plenty. I still dream about Thomas sometimes. Wonder if there was another way. But regrets aren't the same as mistakes. She took his hand. I regret the cost. But I don't regret the choice. Neither do I. He squeezed her hand. You know what they're saying in London now? About us? What? That the Duke and Duchess of Ravensmore have one of the most solid marriages in England. That we're proof respect matters more than romance. Cecilia laughed. If they only knew how it started. A business arrangement on a terrace. A partnership built on honesty. He turned to face her. Which became something more. Not love as poets define it, but something deeper. Something real. Yes, she agreed. Something real. They walked back to the house together, hand in hand. Two people who'd survived terrible choices and made better ones. Behind them, Ravensmore Hall stood solid and ancient. Ahead of them, whatever years remained. And inside, Eliza waited with her own children now. Two daughters who called Cecilia grandmother and learned from her that blood was just the beginning of family. That choosing yourself wasn't selfish, and that honesty, however hard, was always worth the cost. That night, Cecilia sat in the library that had become her sanctuary and wrote in the journal she'd kept for 30 years. Today I realized I am finally, completely free. Free of the girl who sacrificed herself thinking it was love. Free of the woman who enabled destruction thinking it was duty. I chose myself, and the world didn't end. My family survived. I survived. I became more than I ever imagined I could be. Was it worth the cost? Thomas would say no. But Thomas never understood that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save yourself instead of drowning, trying to save someone who won't swim. I chose blood that wasn't blood. I chose family that chose me back. I chose honesty over duty, truth over comfort, myself over martyrdom. And I would do it again, every time. She closed the journal, set it aside, and went to find her husband and daughter, her family, her choice, the one that had saved her life.